will retaliate the situation, I would say that I guess they will give them to launch missiles or to retaliate after this assassination. Once because they can always say, no, this was Hamas, and Hamas will take responsibility for the retaliation. Also because right now we see that Hezbollah is trying more and more to hit Israel. Yesterday they attacked a military base in the northern part of Israel with two missiles and destroyed much of this military base. Um, we heard that the Minister of Defense, Gallant, told them don't make mistakes, but it looks like they are trying to tell him we're not going to listen. So retaliation in the north looks like something that is getting closer to and closer to a war.
And that's what we continue to see. We continue to see Hezbollah threatening Israel, responding pretty much and just sending a pretty strong message, don't escalate further. However, with an assassination like this, is this a strong step that Israel is taking their response one step further?
Not exactly, because this assassination was against Hamas, and I would say from their point of view, they say, okay, as long as Israel is targeting Hamas members and not Hezbollah members, then talking about leaders, okay, because Hezbollah members are being killed every time they are trying to launch missiles towards us, but not leaders. I would say the way they see it is that Israel doesn't want to deal with them. I don't want to say Israel is afraid to open another front, but we see what's going on. Everybody understands that Israel doesn't want to open another front in the north. I understand why, and I agree that we don't need right now to open another front in the north, but we have a problem. We have the Radwan force on the border of Israel. I don't see how people will get back to Kiryat Shmona and Shlomi. And Israel needs to decide when to take the initiative and fight Hezbollah, because otherwise we have big problems in the north.
And now you're hearing from the mayor of Metula, another northern Israeli town, saying that he wants to see this security zone expanded even further. How would that benefit the activity that the IDF can accomplish with these residents evacuated?
Unfortunately, it means that it will take time, because I think, and I support what he said, that people, citizens of the north, cannot come back to their homes knowing that Hezbollah is waiting on the step doors. But right now, Israel doesn't want to do it. It will happen. I hope it will happen, because we understand after the 7th October massacre that we have no other option. We can't deal in a different way, but to do something. But it will take time.
How much is outside pressure, specifically that of the United States, delaying this possible operation?
It's hard to say. We understand that the United States brought a lot of military power to the region to tell Hamas and Hezbollah and Iran not to start another front in the north, meaning they don't want this kind of retaliation. I think the United States understand what will happen to Lebanon if this will happen. So probably they are pressuring, but in the end, Israel has its own goals, and maybe we don't have any other option. And maybe the United States is waiting, to give a green light when it will be time.
The United States certainly playing a factor to everything that is happening here in the Middle East. Even before the October 7th attack, Iran has long provided support to militias seeking to dislodge the American presence in Iraq and Syria, which consists of roughly 3,500 troops. Since the Hamas massacre, U.S. forces have also been part of the circled fighter backed by Iran. As there were 64 attacks on U.S. forces in Syria and Iran in less than 5 weeks. Middle East correspondent Ariel Osran has the report.
A surge in attacks on U.S. forces in the Middle East as anger in the region over Washington's support of Israel's military campaign in Gaza increases. U.S. forces in the Ain al-Assad base in western Iraq suffered another rocket attack on Tuesday. Iraqi security sources said there were no reports of injuries. Additional reports in Iraq of a drone strike on a truck convoy belonging to a Shiite militia west of Baghdad, believed to be carried out by U.S. forces.
These attacks must stop. And if they don't stop, then we won't hesitate to do what's necessary again to protect our troops.
Since October 17, U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria have come under near daily rocket and drone attacks, recording at least 64 incidents and about as many injuries in that time. U.S. forces have responded with a few rounds of airstrikes targeting sites used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps and affiliated groups.
These strikes are intended to disrupt and degrade the freedom of action and capabilities of these groups, which are directly responsible for attacks on U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria.
Iran says that the latest attacks on U.S. forces in the region were a result of, quote, wrong American policies, including support for Israel in its war against Hamas.
America's aid to the Zionist regime is encouraging them to kill and commit cruel acts of neglect against the Palestinian people.
And so, as the number of attacks continues to mount, so too has the frustration over Washington's limited response. And it is only a matter of time before one of those claims the life of a U.S. service member.
So as the United States continues to pressure Israel not to fully get engaged with a war in Lebanon, targeting these Iranian proxies via Hezbollah, they themselves are being targeted by Iranian proxies in the Middle East. So what kind of leg does the United States have to stand on right now?
You know, the United States is trying to make new order in the Middle East, and we were talking just before the massacre about Israel and Saudi Arabia to build a shield, defense shield against Iran. Iran understands it, and of course this is a big fear for Iran, something like this. And this is why we saw retaliation in Israel, and why we see it all over the Middle East with the military bases. We see that in Yemen, you know, we see missiles flying from Yemen to Israel. We saw just yesterday the Yemen's taking over vessel ship, thinking that this is an Israeli ship, but of course this affects all the trade in the world, because much of the world trade, international trade, goes through the Suez Canal towards the Red Sea, back and forth. So this is another front that, you know, just recently we didn't even think that we will deal, or the Americans will need to deal with. Right now we didn't see anything that happened after them taking over the ship, but I guess that the United States will have to do something in order to stop the attacks. And Iran is playing, you know, a very tricky game, trying to see when Biden will say enough towards them.
And as all of this is happening with the international context, we have to remember exactly what is happening here in Israel, specifically the news of a hostage negotiation which could be coming in the next several hours. Now, I want to cross live to our I-24 News correspondent, Owen Alterman, who's in Tel Aviv right now with some of the family members of those hostages. Owen, what are you hearing on the ground from some of these people here in Israel?
Yeah, Nicole, the hour is fast approaching, and just under an hour from now, maybe about half an hour from now, 6 o'clock local time, the narrow war cabinet sets to convene, and then those dominoes, right, of successive meetings onto the full government at 8 o'clock to approve this pending hostage deal. We're here in what's become known as Hostages Square, if you will, near the Israeli military headquarters, by the Tel Aviv Art Museum and the main municipal library in the city. I'll step back so you can take a look and try to take in some of the atmosphere here, especially somber here tonight. You can see the people assembled. There's a kind of anxious tension in the air. The usual somber and plaintive songs. You can see the display of stars in the shape of candles, rather, in the shape of the Star of David, panning on over the empty Shabbat dinner table, which has become, Nicole, as you know, and as our viewers know, such an emblem and a symbol of this fight and of this effort to free the hostages and bring them home. And then those yellow balloons. The balloons just less than an hour ago were released up into the air over Tel Aviv as the sun was setting, and you can see those balloons held there aloft and maybe getting set for a similar display The atmosphere here, Nicole, is very distinctive. I've been to these displays for the Hostages Square before, but tonight is definitely a different atmosphere. As I said, there's more tension, there's more of a somber sense of attitude, there's also a sense of anticipation, frankly. As the minutes tick by toward those series of crucial meetings, towards this hostage deal potentially being okayed and then implemented 24 hours later, obviously, people here on tenterhooks, waiting to see if their loved ones are about to be freed. In some cases, at least, with again 50 hostages out of those estimated 240 who could be set to go free. And again, Nicole, hoping to bring the rest of them home.
And Owen, as we continue to see from these family members, they continue to put pressure on the government, and we might be seeing some action from the government tonight. But for the families of those who their loved ones are not released, what are we expecting their message to be to the government?
The fight goes on, Nicole. We've seen over the course of the last 24 hours just how emotional that fight can be, right? With the reactions either within or even outside of that meeting last night with the war cabinet. You know, we saw how the family members felt and how strongly they feel. We saw the reactions in that meeting yesterday morning, Israel time, in the Israeli parliament. So again, we're seeing just how emotional this is, and you're absolutely right. In a best case, from the perspective of the hostage families, some 80% of the hostages will remain behind in Gaza or in the tunnels of Gaza, even after this deal were to be implemented. So the fight and the effort and the campaign will go on. It's been an incredibly impressive campaign that has captured the attention of Israel, and not just in Israel, but around the world. And as I always say, this has been the strongest foot for Israeli diplomacy. It seems as if not a statement goes by from a foreign minister, from a prime minister, from a president, without mentioning the plight of the hostages. And of course, we even saw a resolution get passed by the UN Security Council that called not for a deal to free the hostages, not for the hostages to be freed in exchange for a ceasefire or in exchange for prisoners to be freed. No, but for the hostages to be freed unconditionally. And not even the Chinese and not even the Russians went out and vetoed that resolution. That's just how holy this cause has become and how uncontested the claim to bring them home has become. And again, just how emotional this is and just how much the families have done so successfully, including with the displays you see all around me. Those candles being lit just after the sunset, the Shabbat dinner table, the empty Shabbat dinner table with 240 places being set behind me. There's even, by the way, a display of 240 empty yellow chairs still in the square, and yes, those balloons being released into the skies of Tel Aviv. These displays are not just here in the heart of Israel's commercial capital, but they're at the four corners of the earth. We've seen them, and we've seen just how much attention has been brought to the hostages and their plight, to the centers of power, and to the streets and squares of cities not just here in Israel, but around the world.
It's certainly going to be an emotional and a highly anticipated night tonight. Owen Alterman, thank you for that latest update. Now, we're going out for a break here on I-24 News, but I'd also like to thank Ronan and Yitzhak. Thank you so much for joining us, breaking down the latest developments on day 46 of the war here in Israel. Truly an ever-changing situation, but we'll be bringing you all of the latest updates here on I-24 News and i24news.tv. Thanks for tuning in. Israel is in a state of war. Families completely gunned down in their beds. We have no idea where is she as our soldiers are fighting on the front line, but the general perception is something that certainly needs to be fought as well.
coverage here of I-24 News. Day 46 since Israel was attacked by Hamas. And tonight, a partial deal to release hostages is closer than ever. Israeli cabinet is sitting right now to vote on the deal that many see as tricky and risky, but they will support it anyway. The proposed deal calls for the release of 53 Israeli children and mothers in exchange for 150 women and youngsters who are imprisoned in Israel for committing terror acts. Also, Israel will hold fire in Gaza for 4 days. If that works, there will be more phases later. This is on the table. We are monitoring the cabinet meeting, and now we'll go to the northern border of Israel, the Israeli-Lebanese border. I-24 News' Robert Swift is there with the latest. Robert.
Yes, so in the last 2 hours, there's been 2 sets of rocket attacks from Lebanese territory into the Israeli border. One took place here in the far eastern end of Israel's northern border. We saw that taking place with explosions over the town of Kiryat Shmona and what looked like interceptions from the Israeli Iron Dome system. There was a second launch from the far western end of Israel's northern border, and the IDF have said that they've responded to these attacks and other attacks using mortar fire, artillery, and tank fire. Now, there have been a series of Israeli airstrikes, mostly carried out by drones, conducted in the south of Lebanon today, with the Israeli military apparently killing a senior Hamas commander, a commander who was responsible for Hamas operations in the south of Lebanon, and it also been reported by Al Madin news site from Lebanon, which has connections to Hezbollah, that 2 of its journalists and a civilian were killed in airstrikes.
How is the day there, Robert, in terms of fire exchange on the border?
At the moment, it's been quiet for the last 2 hours, but you know, these things, sometimes there's quiet moments, and then those are broken quite rapidly by exchanges of fire. For the time being, it's quiet, but you know, the communities here along the border, they're accustomed to that quiet only lasting for so long. We're actually filming right now in a Druze village, and just in the last half an hour, I think it was between, the Israeli Likud minister Miri Regev has said that Israel should consider changing the nation-state law based on the contribution of members of the Druze community to Israel, to the Israeli armed forces. This comes after there's been 6 Druze soldiers serving with the IDF who've been killed, and that party considering changing the law that it passed in 2018 as a response to this, with many of the villages along Israel's northern border being Druze.
Okay, thank you very much, Robert Swift, up there in the northern border of Israel. As we have just said, there is a deal on the table. I-24 News senior correspondent Omer Alterman. Many details. You'll keep us updated with breaking news this evening. What's on the table?
Well, Jacob, according to reports in Israeli media, what seems to be on the table is a deal that would free children and mothers, around 50 hostages, in 5 installments, if you will, 10 a day. And for each 10 hostages that will be released, 30 Palestinian prisoners, women, and juveniles would be released from Israeli jails. At least one report in Israeli media, Jacob, says that none of the Palestinian prisoners set to be released will be those who have been convicted of murder. So obviously a very sensitive point in Israeli society in terms of freeing prisoners. We've seen Palestinian prisoners in the past freed in hostage deals only to go back to terrorism and to killing and murdering Israelis. In this case, if that report is true, those Palestinian prisoners set to be released as part of this pending, although of course not yet approved, hostage deal would not be those with blood on their hands, if you will. But again, this would lead to essentially a 5-day ceasefire in hostilities in the Gaza Strip. So the Israeli military would be committing to stop its attacks and to stop its forward momentum, if you will, in the Gaza Strip for 5 days in order to enable this deal to go through. So Hamas would get both that breathing room and the prisoners relieved from Palestinian prisons. Of course, a very sensitive issue in Palestinian society. And Jacob, would you say a goal Hamas set for itself on October 7th itself in its very first announcement after what it called the Al-Aqsa flood had been released, of course, referring to the murder and the rape and the kidnapping of Israelis on that fateful day. Of course, society, of course, the campaign in here in Israel and around the world to bring them home. A very, very a holy cause for Israelis to bring those hostages home. And Jacob, at least for some of those hostages, and 20% of those hostages, if you will, it seems that the date of their release is nearing. As again, we start to see the meeting of the narrow war cabinet, then the larger security cabinet, and then the full government. Set to meet at 8 o'clock local time in less than 2 hours from now.
Right, that's an important point. We are talking about roughly 50 people. There are almost 240 hostages in Gaza right now. So this is far from a whole big deal. Now, the defense security establishment in Israel is standing behind the deal. I'm seeing headlines in the past few minutes, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yoav Gallant, the defense minister, cryptically going out and saying just over the course of the last hour that there are fateful decisions to be made in the coming hours, and talking about the fact that bringing home our hostages, and again, that pronoun is important, I'll get to that in a moment, is closer than ever. Just as Israel, as he said, goes step after step in terms of eliminating Hamas. So that goal, as Yoav Gallant sees it, still very much underway and still very much on its way to being achieved. There is, of course, some opposition that's popping up. Avi Maoz, a far-right minister or deputy minister from the Noam party, coming out and saying he will oppose the deal, seeing it as stopping the military's forward momentum, and believing that the most important move for Israel would be to occupy the strip and put military pressure on Hamas to, of course, bring back all, and he highlights that word, all the hostages. So, Jacob, there may well be ministers, of course, in that full government, right? The full government meeting, the full cabinet, if you will. There are 30-plus ministers with a wide range of views and a wide range of issues. And there, I think we can expect this not to pass unanimously. There will be some opposition. And it has to be said, for all of the justified focus here in Israel on freeing the hostages, on freeing women and children particularly, there may well be some ministers who oppose it, who oppose the idea of freeing Palestinian prisoners, and as Avi Maoz emphasized, who oppose what could be the military taking a risk that could cost could harm the ability of the campaign to realize the goal of eliminating Hamas, and as he put it, put soldiers in danger. So there will be at least some public debate. Also, should say, Jacob reports Israeli media that there will be a 24-hour period for appeals to be made to the Israeli court system against the release of Palestinian prisoners. One would imagine this will not stop a deal, certainly a deal that I think we can expect will enjoy wide support among the public, and certainly wide support, if not unanimous support, among the ministers. So it won't stop the deal, but it will give some space for public debate over it before its ultimate implementation.
Right. They expect some hostages to be freed as soon as Thursday. That's what we're hearing so far. Owen, thank you very much. Stand by, please, for more breaking news as the Israeli cabinet is considering this bill right now as we speak. With me in the studio now are Ruth Wasserman Manda, a former Israeli Knesset member, and also Neri Arconi, former Air Force pilot, and also formerly in charge of Israel's air traffic management. We'll talk about that later, because
It's not air traffic management, it's civil aviation authorization.
yeah, well, you're in charge of that. Yeah. In any case, let's talk about this deal. Very risky, but seems like no other choice.
Yes, I have no question. I mean, I think that my personal view from around 8th of October is that the main, I would say, main mission of Israel now is to get all the hostages back and then to take care of the Hamas later. This could be taken care of in months or years. It shouldn't be right at this moment, but life of the hostages is much more crucial. And my personal view is you have to prefer life from that. Anyhow.
How do you see this bill?
We in Israel sanctify life, whereas the Hamas in the Gaza Strip, you can't even say sanctifies death, but they're all about death and destruction. That's why I'm wearing this, as many of the citizens of Israel. We are basically mostly all united to bring our hostages back. We're talking about, you mentioned 240 elderly elderly, babies, women. Disgustingly and hypocritically, the world forgets very quickly. And we never forget. We never forget our people. And this is the beauty of Israeli society. And I'm proud of that. And I'm here to say that we will do everything in our power. And I believe that the military will do everything in its power to get our hostages back. And then we'll take care of the Hamas. I agree with you.
Okay, this is a very partial deal.
Yes, it is.
It's not going to be over.
Of course, it's not going to be over, and it's very partial, and it's very unfortunate that it's partial. And Sinwar and his people who sanctify death, I remind again, are playing a very dirty game. They began on October 7th, but they continue to play with the minds of the civilian family members, of the civilian hostages. And they use psychological warfare all the time, manipulating the public opinion in Israel knowingly. We understand our enemy. We understand against whom we are warring. And we understand the challenges. And the challenges are both spiritual and also militaristic.
I would add just one more point. I think that very important issue now is the momentum. Once we started it, there is a momentum of negotiations, of transactions, of give and take. It was not due until now. And this is very important.
Because of the military action, I believe.
Yes, and then I think it's very important, and it's even more important when you see your counterpart, which is untrustable, very crucial, and I mean it's not to deal with somebody who can take his word as true, and then every single life that you can save now, in my opinion, is important. You might lose it if you wait 2 months or even 2 weeks. So just go on with it. And I hope that it will keep on going. I believe it will keep on going.
As we speak, there are sirens in the northern part of Israel, where apparently some rockets are being fired. We have to wait and see and go to report it there and to check what happened. This is an area very becomes almost a political argument with this deal or release of hostages and families of hostages and those who say first we have to go and destroy Hamas and so on. So it's part of Israeli politics now anyway.
It's very bad. But what happened? And what we've seen yesterday in the Israeli parliament is a debate between the right wing, the very, let's say, radical right wing of the Israeli Knesset, and the families of the hostages. And it's a pity we reached that point. It shouldn't be like that. But this is a fact, and I would say very carefully that it might serve some politicians and even the most important.
Everything is political in Israel.
No, I apologize, but I feel, and I beg to disagree. There are very few quite extreme right-wing politicians in this government. They do not represent the majority of the people. The majority of Israelis are united thanks to the Hamas. Left and right, specifically about bringing back the hostages, which is amazing and humanistic. And yes, there are challenges. Obviously, we are paying a price to a terrible, horrific, atrocious enemy. No words will be enough to describe what they have done on October 7th, and yet there is a unity, basically, again, apart from a very few, that says we sanctify life and we will pay a price, yet we will reach our mission, our militaristic mission. Lo and behold, what they had done on October 7th is not done.
I just want to clarify my words. I agree with that. Maybe I didn't say it very clear, but I was talking about the extreme right the Israeli politicians, not the right wing as a general. I said radical, I mean extreme.
And there are a few like that, but the majority is united to bring back the hostage.
Another big question, who will get control of Gaza after Hamas is gone? President Biden talks about the Palestinian Authority, but can you one? What does it mean? Here's I-24 News, so why not?
Israeli media made this statement. A 50-minute press conference Saturday night with Israel's top leaders, with the prime minister saying this about the Gaza Strip on the day after.
The Palestinian Authority, it's very important, cannot get control. Cannot get control of Gaza. After we fought and done all this to get it to them.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu choosing his words carefully. A week after commentators wrongly said he had closed the door on the Palestinian Authority ruling a post-war Gaza.
I will not allow any party into Gaza that supports terrorism and pays terrorists and terrorist families and educates their children to murder Jews and to eliminate the state of Israel.
And putting Netanyahu just maybe in line with U.S. President Joe Biden, whose op-ed in the Washington Post came out just as Netanyahu was speaking.
As we strive for peace, Gaza and the West Bank should be reunited under a single governance structure, ultimately under a revitalized Palestinian Authority, as we all work towards a two-state solution.
A potential meeting of the minds, at least on a post-war Gaza, is important for Israel, making it more likely Israel will achieve its core goal. And Israelis should also pay attention to the rest of Biden's op-ed. Normalization between Israel and Saudi Arabia implicitly is still on. The red marker corridor from India through the Middle East is still on. And Israel and Ukraine are, for Biden, a common cause of defending American allies. Israel can think not only of what to take from that U.S. grand strategy, but also how to help it.
With us now is Samer Senejlawi, a Fatah activist from Jerusalem. Thank you very much for joining us. What will have to happen with the PA, which no one seems to be happy with, neither the Palestinians, in order for the PA to take control of Gaza?
Well, the Palestinians are not satisfied from Abbas himself as the leader. Palestinians want him to leave the scene. Actually, the Palestinians can accuse Abbas on the responsibility of all the destruction that is happening to Gaza now. He has brought corruption to the West Bank and he has brought destruction to Gaza because he has cancelled the elections in 2021. If he has allowed this election to happen, most probably there would have been a different leadership in Gaza, and all of us could have avoided the 7th of October and what has happened after it. But he insisted to keep the division between Palestinians. He insisted to kill the democracy. He insisted to keep protecting himself and his authoritarian regime in the West Bank. Not
Changing the leadership of the Palestinian Authority, that's the way to make it a new one, as President Biden calls it?
Well, more important, what does President Biden? He has said very important remarks. I think it came too late, but it's better too late than never. It is also what the Palestinians want. The Palestinians want Abbas to leave the seat. Unfortunately, now with the current situation in Gaza, we cannot have national elections. So we need to have some kind of a non-corrupt government by decent politicians, by reformers, by pragmatists. You have people who are.
Some of you have many.
There are a lot of good Palestinians to take this lead. And you can. I can mention Nasser Qudra, I can mention Salam Fayyad, I can mention lots of Palestinians. Inside Palestine, there are young leaders that is working hard to get the opportunity to participate in the political life, to make changes, new blood should come. And now it's the time. We can work into a unifying government that brings back the West Bank and Gaza, and then work towards providing the option of construction, replacing
armed groups who are out to perform terrorist acts almost every day, going inside Israel and around the West Bank. Who's going to control it?
Well, let me tell you something. Do you know why did Hamas succeed in its strategy? It's violent, using violent resistance against Israel because they don't need a partner in this option. And they accumulate.
Hi, ES Magical Channel. Thank you so much.
Frankly speaking, why did Fatah did not succeed in its strategy? Because Fatah choosing the option of diplomacy and political path, it needs a partner. It cannot succeed alone. So now, apparently, we have some hope that there will be a change in leadership in Israel. If this happens parallel to a change in leadership on the Palestinian side, a leadership that really puts the
Sis,
Palestinian on the track of progress, on the track
okay
of
lang.
development.
Dumating na police
Can show the
clearance mo?
Palestinians that we have now a partner, and the partner from the Israeli side is working with us and not against us. So, in a way or another, this will help to guarantee the security that Israelis need. Security on the Israeli side and Palestinian dignity and progress and hope comply each other and will result to each other. Instead of keeping ourselves prisoners of this cycle of violence, we need all of us to go out of this cycle of violence and start offering what both nations want. Israelis want security and they deserve security and they need it. No Israeli is allowed to be heard, but also Palestinians need dignity and they need rights. And we can offer this to the Palestinians and at the same time offer security to the Israelis and work in moving together in one direction towards whatever paths are open in the diplomatic horizon. We shouldn't now maybe dictate the end results, but we should now dictate some kind of cooperation. Palestinians and Israelis should start seeing themselves as a solution to each other, not a problem to each other. I know that these are hard days. I know that there is a lot of pain, there is a lot of suffering, there is a lot of anger on both sides. But we need both to overcome this together.
Summer St. John, thank you very much for that. Thank you. By the way, as we speak, there was another barrage of rockets towards the center of Israel. About 8 rockets at least were detected. We'll see about that. So, Ruth, any good news can emerge out of that? A new Palestinian Authority, more security for Israel? Is this in the cards?
I can analyze it to the best of my ability, which would be a tad different than Summer, whom I know and respect. There is a lot of disappointment from Abu Mazen, giving a lot of criticism to his own people that it is a corrupt government. However, we need to understand that in 2005, when we left, when the IDF left, and there was not one single soldier left, Israeli soldier in the Gaza Strip, not one Jew left. In fact, the Jews who were buried in the Gaza Strip were dug out and brought to Israel. So there was not even a Jewish bone in the Gaza Strip. What happened next was that the Hamas took power after elections in the Gaza Strip, and they proceeded to shoot in the kneecaps the Fatah operatives and throw them out of the building.
That was in the story. That's
No. This is very important to understand because this is the relationship, the existing relationship, whether politically correct or incorrect, comfortable to watch, uncomfortable to watch. This is in existence today. The enmity between Hamas and the Islamic Jihad and Fatah.
You're assuming there's no Hamas anymore. That's at least what we're assuming.
So 1 second, there is a lot of Hamas in the West Bank as well. The Hamas has been infiltrating with the help of Iran, the West Bank, as well as the Islamic Jihad. Israeli IDF has been making arrests in the West Bank of Hamas operatives as well. It is an absolute a misinterpretation of the reality to think that only 30,000, 40,000 Hamas operatives within the Gaza Strip are actually the Hamas. No, it is the Hamas in the Gaza Strip. It is in the West Bank. It is in the north, where the Hezbollah is. There's also Hamas, but not only that. It is an both in the Gaza Strip and in the West Bank. Without that, the hate, the indoctrination, the incitement is that same Hamas, but it's not tangible. It's in idea. And it cannot allow for anybody to live next to anybody else. Therefore, in the day after, before we discuss who will take over the Gaza Strip or the leadership of the Palestinians, and it's up to the Palestinians to decide who will take over the Palestinian Authority, we need to understand that a whole remake of the psyche of the education needs to take place.
Okay, we'll continue this discussion in a moment. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back with more special coverage here on I-24 News.
Israel is in a state of war. Families completely gunned down in their beds. We have no idea where we stand as our soldiers are fighting on the front line, but the general perception is something that certainly needs to be fought as well.
Welcome back to I-24 News. Rockets and a possible hostage deal. I-24 News, Jonathan Reagan is near the Israeli-Gaza border with the update from there. Jonathan.
Yes, we could actually see some, about 15 minutes ago, the rockets that were launched from Gaza, from the northern part of the Gaza Strip, towards central Israel, reaching as far as Rishon LeZion, just a little bit to the south of Tel Aviv. So the ability to fire rockets even from the northern West Bank is still there as long as Israel does not conquer every piece of land as it is slowly doing. That ability is still there. On the other hand, of course, the main headline being the possible hostage deal, which may be reached later today. Apparently, there is a deal on the table, and now the Israeli government is convening in various forums to approve that deal. This afternoon here on the ground began rather quiet, but around 5 p.m. things began to pick up, both in the form of Israeli artillery towards the Gaza Strip and in the form of rockets towards Israel. First towards Ashkelon, the largest big city to the Gaza border, and as we mentioned about 15 minutes ago, further deeper into Israel, reaching central Israel. So yes, the talk of a hostage deal, which may come along with 5 days of ceasefire, that's on the table, but on the ground, fighting is still raging.
Jonathan, what's exactly the IDF position regarding the deal?
As far as we understand, all of the security establishment, being both the IDF and the Shabak, Internal Security Agency, and the Mossad, are both going for this deal. This is as far as we understand. Of course, no one in the security establishment would voluntarily go for an option of a 5-day ceasefire as things are on the ground, with Israel having a very big leverage. But of course, when you're speaking of 50, maybe even 53 hostages, a number that's circulating, that's of course a consideration, something that you have to take into consideration. And about this clause in the deal, which says that for 6 hours every day, Israeli UAVs will not fly above the skies of northern Gaza. Sources in the Israeli army say we have other means of seeing what's going on. Generally speaking, the Israeli security establishment is for the deal.
Okay, Jonathan Reagan from California's defense correspondent, thank you very much. Back to Owen Alterman with the more updates on the discussions around the deal. Two Israeli right-wing parties are already saying we're against it.
Right, Jacob, that's the big news this hour. Just to fill out the picture, though, over the course of the last half hour, suspicion of a hostile aircraft in, I think, 2 places along the Israel-Lebanon border, as well as a number of red alerts across the length of the border. We don't yet know fully how that's all been resolved. Should say that there has been a series of false alarms, thankfully false alarms, of hostile aircraft over the last number of days and weeks, but obviously we have to be very, very careful about every single one, so obviously we'll stay on top of that. But you're right, Jacob, the big political news is what's shaping up to be a meaningful amount of opposition in the full government to the pending hostage deal, right? 2 far-right parties, Bezalel Smotrich's Religious Zionism Party, and Itamar Ben-Gvir's Jewish Power Party, as well as Avi Maoz of the one-man show, if you will, Noam Party, at least one man within the government, all coming out against the deal. And that's significant, Jacob, not because it endangers a majority in the government for the deal, and that's a foregone conclusion, but there will be a meaningful number of no votes. And so it shows that there is a part of the public, and there are parties who feel their constituents will back them up on this, which is not in favor of the deal. That will not sink this deal, but I do think it raises questions about potential future deals, right? Where potentially the type of Palestinian prisoners released will be those who may have committed more serious crimes, for example. And for that matter, every hostage who is in the tunnels of Gaza is a holy cause for the Israeli public. But Jacob, of course, it's particularly true when you're talking about children, who are the focus of this particular deal. So I do think there is at least some question about potential future deals, which might be more sensitive, which might be more difficult for parts of the Israeli public to accept. So the headline at this hour is that there will be meaningful opposition, although by no means close to majority, but meaningful opposition to this deal when it comes to the full government, which again we're expecting in just about an hour and a half from now at 8 o'clock local time.
All right, Owen, thank you very much. Keep updating us on breaking news as the government sits down to decide. It's hard for me to see the political benefit of opposing this deal. It's not entirely clear why would they oppose this deal, but still there's significant opposition in the government, maybe even from other right-wing members, such as from the Likud party.
possibly?
I would compare it to it was on. I apologize for that, but in football games when the referee takes a yellow card, all the players are arguing. I've never seen in the last dozens of years one referee that will put the yellow card back in his pocket, but they still go on doing it. And the reason is, like he said, is for the next card. And that's exactly what happens now. They know the extreme right wing opposition, they know that they don't have any majority in the government, but they do it first for the voters, and secondly, as he said, they do it for the next steps, I guess, of next deals, let's say.
Also trying to understand why would even right-wing supporters be against the deal to rescue 50 Israelis?
I will try to understand, although I disagree with them on this particular issue. The right wing have an ideology that is supported by their own voters and their own constituencies that basically says that one, one cannot negotiate with the enemy. Two, that the enemy is not to be trusted and therefore is manipulating or playing with the minds of the Israeli public. Three, one cannot compromise the IDF soldiers that are on the ground and basically giving the enemy the time that they need, so-called, to be reorganized. And obviously they will use it to not only reorganize, but also to move southwards and to infiltrate themselves into areas that are basically civilian.
Yeah, this is all fine, but the IDF says we're okay with it. So
Right, but the right wing thinks differently, and very often one sees in the last years, and this is a dilemma. It's a moral dilemma. Do we give to the enemy, which we know seeks death? Went to huge lengths to do horrifying things to Israeli civilians, cutting limbs off live people, gang raping women. They say we cannot possibly give them anything in return for anything because they seek to kill more of us. And I can, in some way, I don't agree with that, but I can somehow try to explain that point of view. It's not something that is completely irrelevant or unlogical, illogical.
You know that during the last, let's say from the minute that this war began, or let's say from the day of the massacre, there was a debate in Israel. What is the aim of the war? And at the first days, it was quite clear to everybody that the first aim of the first purpose of this war, and the highest option, is just to crash the Hamas. And then, slowly, it takes time, and the Israeli people realized that there is a big issue, a big, very important issue with the hostages. And then, on the let's say last week or two, there was a debate in the cabinet which purpose of this, which mission of the war is above the other one, the crushing the Hamas or bring back home the hostages. And I think that at this point, we see that those who said that it is more important to bring back the hostages are on the other side now. And since we can see if it works, we cease fire. And the meaning of ceasing fire is very, very clear to everybody. We stop at least for 5 days, crashing the Hamas, give them time to get organized. We will not be able to get intelligence with drones, and we bring back the hostages. And I think that this debate between those two missions of the war, that's becoming, we'll keep on going.
I'm not sure that it's a left or right debate. It's a huge and very difficult and challenging debate that exists. But in general, I think that the relationship, as you had said, between
you've just seen the two major right-wing parties opposing this. This is a left and right debate.
But there, no, because there are many right
but this is a very important point to make. A lot of right wingers in Israel support the deal. It's not a left and right. What the Hamas wants us to understand is that it's a left and right. The very small parties on the very far right that oppose this deal do not represent at least even half of the Israeli public.
Netanyahu, the Prime Minister, said today again, after meeting the families last night, today he said again, first goal is to crush the Hamas, and secondly, to return the hostages. What is he thinking about?
I would not talk about Mr. Netanyahu now because for Netanyahu it is not very. It doesn't have to be a very important reason to say one day one thing and the other day another thing. So I'm not surprised by it. He said yesterday something one, now he said different. But what is more important is the records of the cabinet. In the cabinet, I think 2 or 3 days ago, Mr. Gantz and Mr. Eisenkot said that they prefer to ceasefire and to get hostages back. And then Minister Smotrich said, no, we decided that will not be the way we will handle the war in Gaza. And then Netanyahu said, all right, it will go simultaneously together in a synergic way, some way. But as we see today, it's hypothetical. It doesn't work. You get to the point that you have to decide one way or the other, even for 1 week. But for this week, we will have to decide which way you go. And I think that we decided.
Yeah, in a way. When will the United States seriously react to attacks on its forces in the Middle East? Tonight, the Pentagon official confirmed a couple of airstrikes in Iraq. There are reports that the Pentagon is getting increasingly frustrated about not reacting enough. I-24 News' Ariel Schwan is more on that.
A surge in attacks on U.S. forces in the Middle East as anger in the region over Washington's support of Israel's military campaign in Gaza increases. U.S. forces in the Ain al-Assad base in western Iraq suffered another rocket attack on Tuesday. Iraqi security sources said there were no reports of injuries. Additional reports in Iraq of a drone strike on a truck convoy belonging to a Shia militia west of Baghdad, believed to be carried out by U.S. forces.
These attacks must stop. And if they don't stop, then we won't hesitate to do what's necessary again to protect our troops.
Since October 17th, U.S. troops in Iraq and Syria have come under near daily rocket and drone attacks, recording at least 64 incidents and about as many injuries in that time. U.S. forces have responded with a few rounds of airstrikes, targeting sites used by Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps and affiliated groups.
These strikes are intended to disrupt and degrade the freedom of action and capabilities of these groups, which are directly responsible for attacks on U.S. forces in Iraq and Syria.
Iran says that the latest attacks on U.S. forces in the region were a result of, quote, wrong American policies, including support for Israel in its war against Hamas.
What America's aid to the Zionist regime is encouraging them to kill and commit cruel acts of neglect against the Palestinian people.
And so, as the number of attacks continues to mount, so too has the frustration over Washington's limited response. And it is only a matter of time before one of those claims the life of a U.S. service member.
With us now is Shukriya Ratat, an expert on the Middle East and Iran. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
So, any way you look at it, all roads lead to Iran. You can call it Hamas, Hezbollah, Houthis, whatever. So what to do with Iran? That's the question.
Hello? Di ka rin what?
Policies are based on destroying Israel and forcing the right to withdraw. So if
Intang gumatang ti Pilafel, anak ka ng Pilafel.
for sure they will do everything to achieve that goal. So that's the reason when we're talking about the Hamas in the south of Israel is one of the wings of Islamic regimes to attack Israel, surrounding Israel from the north, east, and south. So now they're worried about, okay, with the war on Gaza, with the destruction of Iran right now. Iran's losing one of these wings. So what they're trying to do is trying to put more pressure on the U.S. now in Iran through their proxy groups to forcing the U.S. to stop supporting Israel in this war. This is one of they actually go on. Another one, we know they're trying to force the U.S. to withdraw from Iraq too. We know more than 2,500 forces, U.S. forces staying in Iraq as a trainer for the U.S. For the Iraqi forces. They're trying to force even that force to withdraw. So now what you report about it is the first time even for me it's a surprise that we're hearing that he is reacting in Ain al-Assad and Baghdad to that militia group's attacks because since the starting of 17th of October last month until now, youth base has been attacked for more than 60 times. And what U.S. Has reacted is attacking the bases in Syria, not even inside Iraq, the border side of the Syria. So what it's telling us is even Biden administration is really hesitant or they don't want to attack the Iran-backed militia group in Iraq, which they know if they attack these militia groups, that they allow this militia group to achieve power after the change of 2003. This militia group is not, we're not talking about the some proxy group, we're talking about the kind of similar to the Hamas group in Baghdad. They have Iran created another IRGC inside of Iraq, so it's not an easy issue for the U.S. to deal with, and this has come as an outcome or consequences of the U.S. policy in Iraq after the collapse of the regime.
Now, as a result of what's happening right now in the Middle East, and with the nuclear Iran looming behind, should the United States change its course?
Definitely, whenever they, not just U.S., Western country, France, Germany, when they talk about Iran, they always put a priority for Iran nuclear program. They saw this program as the only issue that they need to handle to prevent any security crisis in the region, the Middle East. Why they say, okay, if Iran achieves that nuclear bomb, then the other countries in the region, like Saudi Arabia, other countries will want to have this bomb, or if Iran has a such bomb, it may attack Israel. So I don't think having that bomb attacking Israel will be worse than what happened in October when the Hamas attacked. So it tells them now that you see how Iran can use another element that they have, the proxy groups can already turn the Middle East, not just Middle East even, can turn the global problem in the economy, security, and humanitarian crisis. Why I'm saying that this is global issues, not just Middle East issue. Houthis attack on these shipping vessels, telling us if one of these shipping vessels is attacked by Houthis missiles that they receive that missile from Iran, telling you that the Red Sea, that the part of the global economy route will be under attack, which is how this will impact global economy. And we're talking about the other countries that are involved in the region, like China, like Russia, that not just the U.S. now is the decision maker in this region. After the Syrians uprising after 2015, when Russia came to the Middle East to protect Assad, now Russia is another actor, and China, when they open the business, the economy in this region, they are another actor in the region. They have to decide and come together to how protect their own interests too.
Okay, Shukriya, brothers, thank you very much for that. Thank you. Back to the studio here.
Thank you, Brian.
So, the question of Iran, it all comes from there. How will Israel react now that we've seen what's going on?
I would divide the problem of Israel now to military issues and internal political issues. And they're not necessarily attached. They are, in some way, they touch each other, but they are not fully connected to each other. And as we see, on 7th of October, the first one to go, first reserve soldiers to go to the units were the protesters. And that is a sign to our enemy from the other side, do not build on the internal problems in Israel. It will affect the future of Israel internally. But as regards to our power, military power, witch trials. And this is something that should be very well clarified now to Hamas, to Hezbollah, to Iran, to everybody. Israel military is not under existential risk. Period. Very far from it. Even if Hamas and the Houthis and Hezbollah and Syria and everybody together will start a war simultaneously against Israel, it won't work. And therefore, I'm not hesitating now to talk here about the internal political issues in Israel, because they should be solved, because, you know, in a month or 2 or 3 months, the war will end. And we'll have to overcome all the damages that we suffered here. Not only material damages, but also other damages.
Questions will Israel become stronger out of this?
I believe yes, by the way. I believe yes. I think it takes time. We'll have difficult times, I think, in the coming months or 2, maybe even more difficult than we have, not regarding the massacre, but internal problems. But eventually, we will be stronger. I believe so. Do you agree?
I feel that the most important thing for the resilience of this country is the unity amidst its people. And I thank Hamas for bringing our people together, both the right wing and the left wing, apart from very few exceptions. And I do believe that the military is strong enough to overcome the challenges both in the south, the West Bank, and in the north.
That the Israeli society will come back to itself?
I will do everything in my power to help that happen.
That's a good answer.
I think that we will face something different here. It's not overcoming. The unity is, you know, it is limited even now. But I think that once we face, and this is the historic of the Jewish people and the Israeli people. Once we face, when we face an enemy, we get united.
Just one, I'll even go overboard and say I thank Iran, because after this will be over, not only will the Abraham Accords be stronger, but there will be a Saudi-Israeli peace agreement.
That's a good point to say. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And now there's the 40 minutes video documenting the horrors of October the 7th was screened at the UN. I-24 News' Mike Wagenheim was there with the reaction.
Alongside the military war between Israel and Hamas, there's also a war of narratives about the conflict, and it's especially prevalent here at the United Nations in New York, where Israel is being battered due to its response to Hamas's October 7th massacre and the high civilian casualty toll in Gaza. The Israeli ambassador to the United Nations, Gilad Erdan, presented diplomats, ambassadors, and UN officials with an opportunity here on Monday to view 45 minutes of footage of the massacre itself, including footage from Hamas GoPro and phone cameras, along with closed caption footage in several of the massacre sites. Erdan afterwards said that he wasn't surprised by the reactions of those in attendance and hopes it will have some impact diplomatically going forward.
People are either shocked or very sad because as human beings, it's very sad to see children screaming 1 minute after they lost their dad. I know this building very well. I understand international politics. I know that many of these countries, they play by their internal political interests. But we are all human beings, and you can never know who of the ambassadors who watched this terrible footage might wake up and tell his country and tell his leaders what he saw here today.
Earlier on Monday, Israeli supporters, together with families of hostages being held in Gaza, protested outside the United Nations Children's Fund building, UNICEF. Monday is International Children's Day. They say that the UNICEF and the UN in general not doing enough to protect those children being held hostage in Gaza. Those same supporters have protested outside the home of United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres 2 Fridays in a row, urging him to do more to bring the hostages home. They say they will continue to do so on a weekly basis until those hostages return to Israel. Reporting here from the United Nations in New York City, Mike Wagenheim, I-24 News.
Thank you, Mike, in New York. Ruth, you've watched this film, whatever you want to call it.
Very, very difficult decision. I decided to watch it. I must say that it was horrifying, very emotionally difficult to deal with. It's horrific. It's horrific. It's like almost it's snuff material, and the more horrific reality is that the perpetrators themselves are the ones who filmed these horrors, these gang rapes, and the cutting of bodies while people were alive and burning. It's inhumane what these people were indoctrinated to do. All I can say is that at the end of the day, we have never fought a more justified war.
Ruth Watson Alanda and Mary Connie, thank you very much, both of you. We'll take a short break now, and we'll come back with more special coverage here on I-24 News.
Made for Me, a unique concept in Israel. Custom-made men's fashion to your measurements. Made for Me, designer of all your events. Schedule your appointment at www.madeforme.co.il. Made for Me, official dresser of I-24 News.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Israel is at war. Make an investment in Israel bonds. It is the most powerful and direct way to stand with Israel. Visit israelbonds.com and invest now.
Israel is in a state of war. Families completely gunned down in their beds. We have no idea where is she as our soldiers are fighting on the front line, but the general perception is something that certainly needs to be fought as well.
Welcome back. We're here on I-24 News. Special coverage. We go to the north. Robert Street is near the Israeli-Lebanon border. We got it from there, Robert.
So in the last hour, there's been 3 different incidents of what appear to be drones crossing from Lebanese territory into Israeli territory. The first of these happened about 45 minutes ago in the far western end of Israel's northern border, around the town of Shlomi. It's understood that a drone was intercepted here, and that there was also possibly rockets fired. About 5 minutes after this incident, there was another possible drone infiltration, this one taking place further to the east, about the central point of Israel's northern border. And then finally, about 15 minutes ago, there was rocket sirens in the area where we are, in the far eastern end of Israel's northern border. We were moving by road at the time when the sirens rang out. So we had to jump out of the car and check what was going on around us, with about 5 or 6 different communities in the area around us having sirens going off, warning of possible aircraft infiltration.
Robert Sweet, thank you very much for that. Now to California's senior correspondent on Alderman, monitoring the government sitting tonight, trying to decide on this hostage deal. What's the latest?
Well, Jacob, it's now the 7 o'clock hour here in Israel. This is when the Security Cabinet, that is the statutory body that is supposed to be in charge of security decisions, is supposed to start meeting. And this presumably is when that narrow war cabinet, that cabinet of 3 voting members and 5 total members that includes the 2 observers, and their meeting was supposed to be finished. We haven't yet gotten word about how they voted. Of course, presumably, they support this deal. They were in the room as the terms are being hashed out, so it would be awfully strange if that forum were not to send it forward and green light it, presumably by a unanimous vote. But then it would go to that Security Cabinet, again, a statutory body under Israeli law, so they will need to green light it. We'll see to what degree there's opposition there. We can expect that there will be, because the leaders of the religious Zionism party, the far-right religious Zionism party, Bezalel Smotrich, and the far-right Jewish Power Party, Itamar Ben-Gvir, both part of that forum, have said they'll come out and oppose this deal. That, as we mentioned a half an hour ago at 6:30 local time. And then, of course, at 8 o'clock, it goes to the meeting of the full government, of the full cabinet, 30-plus ministers with a wide range of views within this coalition government, and they will need to give the final green light. Again, under Israeli law, they need to green light the freeing of Palestinian prisoners, which, of course, by all accounts, is part of this deal. Again, up to 150 Palestinian prisoners, women and juveniles, reportedly none of them convicted of murder. A very, very important detail rather. So expecting to see that start in an hour from now at 8 o'clock local time. I do want to go back, Jacob, very quickly to some of the discussion after what we discussed a half an hour ago in the studio, why it might be that there would be opposition to this deal. First of all, looking at the statements themselves from the religious Zionism party and the Jewish Power Party, what are the things they mentioned? First and foremost, concern about that 5-day ceasefire, that it will halt the momentum of the Israeli military and the all-important goal of eliminating Hamas and expose Israeli soldiers to dangers. That actually is the most important point that both of these statements, I think, lead with. Only after that, interestingly enough, is opposition to the freeing of the Palestinian prisoners. But it has to be said, overshadowing all of this is the specter of the Gilad Shalit deal. I've been very clear in our air, Jacob, just how horrendous and how disastrous I think that decision was. But it's important to say it's not just me. Israel's public broadcaster last May, last spring, on the occasion of 75th anniversary, asked Israelis what they thought of that decision and 24 other decisions made over the course of Israel's history. Do you want to know what the numbers were? Only 25% of the Israeli public thinks that decision to free Gilad Shalit in exchange for more than 1,000 Palestinian prisoners was a good decision. 25% saying good decision. 75% saying a bad decision. Jacob, out of 25 decisions that were listed for those answering that poll, this one came in 23rd place, meaning it was the 3rd least popular decision of 25 made over the course of Israel's history. The specter of that deal hangs over all other deals in the future, although it has to be said, it's very, very important, this deal is not the Shalit deal. The terms are very, very different, and the circumstances are very, very different, and many people who bitterly oppose the Shalit deal will support this deal. But again, as for future deals over the course of this war, definitely a warning sign for decision makers, given the amount of opposition that we're going to see in the government meeting, the cabinet meeting tonight. Again, far from a majority, does not endanger this deal, but raises questions of potential other future deals, which may be more sensitive.
Right. Thank you very much for this context, Owen. We're talking about civilians. As you said, it's a very different deal. 50 of them and about 150 prisoners from Israeli jails. It's a entirely different deal. Danny Alon, former ambassador to the United States, is with us. Good evening.
Good evening, Jim.
How do you see this?
Well, it's gut-wrenching, but this is the only choice we have because human suffering has to stop. This is the difference between a democracy, a country which is, for life, for the livings, and other countries. It's not good for Israel from let's say, from a strategic point of view. But we also have to take, we have to take care of the human suffering as first place. Hamas is getting not only a good deal for themselves, but also a good, I would say, image and PR. Because what did they insist is that, for their 50, what they released, 50 or 53, women and children, they get 150 also women and children in their eyes. So it's like they put Israel on the same kind of moral equivalency as if we also jail women and children. Although these women and children, first of all, no children, they're all over 16, but all of them were terrorists who were coming to kill the civilians. But from the Hamas purpose, I think it's a very good day.
Yeah, but still, it's not the 1,000+ of Shalit, and 4 to 5 days of ceasefire, and the pressure in Israel is to release the hostages. I'm sure this deal will get the approval of Israeli public. What do you say?
Oh, there's no doubt about it. I think that the only ones who may vote against it in the cabinet are those who really are, unfortunately, at this time, are trying to make political gains out of it. We saw that this Jewish power of Ismaili Ben-Gvir party, we saw how they dropped in a very irresponsible way, careless way, I would say, yesterday, the discussion of death penalty for terrorists, which is not the time, it's not the place to do it, but it seems like they work really for a very populistic ideology and just try to gain some political momentum. I hope this will not help them when it comes to the real time of the voting, because they have shown total irrespect to human lives, to our hostages over there, and at the end of the day, they hurt Israeli interests.
Is there a serious reason to be worried about the Israeli military stopping for 5 days and maybe losing momentum?
Well, we should be very, very cautious. You recall, Jacob, that Hadar Goldin, our lieutenant, who was actually killed in action, and then his body was snatched, kidnapped during 2014 operation, was a few minutes after a ceasefire was declared. So there always has the issue of keeping alert. And this is the job of the commanders on the field, to make sure that the same tension, operational tension is being kept. Also, when it comes to the ceasefire, whether it's 4 days or 5 days, it will give the Hamas some chance to regroup, but also it will give our forces on the ground to gather more intelligence, to get maybe more formations, and to get some more lessons learned in the battle for the next stage. But there will have to be a next stage, because if this war ends with Hamas leadership intact, then it will be a major, major strategic blow for Israel and for the region, quite frankly.
Let me ask you, as a diplomat, there's some breaking news that South Africa is breaking ties with Israel. That is after the ambassador in Jerusalem was summoned by Israeli foreign ministry. What's happening between the two countries?
I can tell you that the South African regime is one of the most corrupt in Africa, and it's really hard to be on top of that list, and they managed to be on that list. The South Africans, since the ANC, the American National Congress Party, took over, they changed their relationship with Israel totally, because they were always, I would say, in bed with the PLO, with the arch terrorist Arafat, who was a welcome visitor in Pretoria, in South Africa. During Mandela, which was the first leader, relationships were quite cordial. Mandela was the statesman. But after him, Jacob Zuma, all the way down to the leaders of today, they are, I think, just still politicians and not statesmen. They have brought their country to the verge of economic and social collapse. And the only reason Israel did not jump the gun and sever relations with them is because of care of our Jewish community in South Africa. The way that they did it now is just a matter of, again, them siding with the most notorious and the most barbaric force today on the scene of the international community, which is Hamas, ISIS, Nazi-like regime.
All right, stay with us, Danny. Moving to this, many Israeli children are away from home because home is under shelling from Hamas or Hezbollah. Now they have to maintain some sort of normalcy, and I-24 News, Hannah Rifkin has more on that.
זה מפחיד אותי, כי אחרי מה שהיה באמת ביחידי, אני לא ממש, אני לחוץ, יש לי הרבה פחד, ובסדר, אני מתמודד עם זה, זה המצב.
Israel's evacuated families of the South are trying to overcome the traumatic events of October 7th and the instability which followed. At the same time, they're in hotels, biding time and seeking some sense of normalcy for their children. One organization has taken up mission to help those families regain routine and stability by providing technology and innovation workshops.
And the idea is to give them two things. One is to give them the entertainment. Unfortunately, they were, after a very difficult experience, we wanted to give them some fun experience, but also to bring them some kind of window to what technology can bring. We already did, I went to 10 hotels, mostly 100, 250 people come in each of our activity. Now we're starting another activity, which is actually units that are fixed. So instead of coming to an hotel once a week or once every month, we basically want to give these kids a real sense of education.
This is a debut community center event for Jerusalem youth to mingle with evacuated kids. Families are encouraged to come from their hotels. For some, this is their first time leaving hotel premises to socialize.
אני אף פעם לא עשיתי מציאות מדומה, וגם אף פעם לא עשיתי את המחזיקי מפתחות, כאילו אלה שמכינים אותם מהמחשב.
With everything from virtual reality to 3D printing, video game programming, and more, this weekly workshop not only provides a sense of stability, but also exposes them to new opportunities and skills.
There's a big wow effect. They can see that they can actually experience new technology. And for some of them, to be honest, in the first few days, there were people that didn't come out of the rooms in the hotel. So it was really a way to bring them out of their, unfortunate situation, unfortunate experience they were, and bring them something that they can finally, open up, play, learn some new stuff.
Seeing their creations come to life is an important component to the process, Dr. Modena says, as is easing them into a new normal.
זה ממש נעים לי, וזה כיף לי שאני עושה את זה, וזה ממש מרגיע, ואני ממש אוהב את זה, טוב לי.
Noam and his cousins have high spirits.
אני יודע שעם ישראל חי, וחזק.
Hannah Rifkin, I-24 News, Jerusalem.
Yeah, back to the studio here with Ambassador Danny Ayalon. It will take a long time, Danny, for Israeli society to get back on track after what happened.
Sure, well, this is a wound which will keep open for a long, long time. First and foremost, because of the, I'd say, the enormity and the scope of the human sufferings. We're talking about hundreds of families that were hurt. I hope and pray that most, if not all, of the hostages that come back will keep in a good form, not just physically but also emotionally. The emotional, I think, hurting is the hardest one to overcome, and this will stay with us for a long time. Also, they will always be a living memory to the, I would say, to the major failure of the military on the 7th of October, who could not really protect them for long, for so long. And then, of course, there is the concept, which there's only one authority which was responsible for this failed dangerous concept, and that was the Prime Minister Netanyahu. So they will come and they will be here and they will hunt him as well, politically, until we will see here, and I believe we will see here sooner than later, new elections.
Yeah, might be so, but we'll have to wait and see. Anything is possible with Israeli politics. Let's talk with a family member of one of presumably hostage in Gaza. Omri Yashtik is with us. Thank you very much for joining us, Omri.
Hi, thank you.
What do you know about your brother Idan at this point?
So we know for the story and all the process of his escaping from the party. Then went to the party at the 7th of October, and we just as everyone tried to escape from the party, and he took with him another two friends in the car. One of them couldn't drive, so he then took responsibility and drove for him. They went tried to go back to Tel Aviv, but the Hamas terrorists start shooting them. Then he turned to the other side, and after around 4 kilometers, the Hamas terrorists also waited there, started shooting them. Then he ran from the car and tried to escape with the two friends, but they was murdered by Hamas, and he then saw there another guy that he ran with him, and their last contact was around 9, and this is what that's all we know. We are like in since then in the fall, of course, the army trying to update us and investigating.
Right. You're talking obviously about the Nova Party, where almost 400 people were murdered and the scores were kidnapped to Gaza. Now, there is this deal, and apparently they're talking about children and mothers. So if that happens, that will not include your brother. What are your feelings about this deal?
So actually now we are it's very very hard hour. We are very nervous from what's gonna happen, but we don't actually know. Um, Yesterday we met first all the government, the prime minister, and all the others, and and we don't know about the deal. If there is a deal, of course, that this is what we can understand from the last hours, the updates. But I don't know. Of course, it's something that's very hard for us to even to understand if it will be just babies and I don't know girls, women. So we are happy for them. Of course, we are happy for all the life that will be saved, but we are still waiting for him. And I just we have our belief, and we hope that everyone, all the hostages will be saved at the end. But we hope that the process will be fast. They will be still alive.
How is your family coping with this?
So as I said, it's a very very hard hours. Everyone, and each one of us
us dealing with this situation in other ways, different ways. So for me, it's it's very hard and everything, and as well my parents and my sister, and we are waiting for for updates, just trying to do what we can, and if it's like to talk with people, to take to talk with the people from the government, talk with other diplomatics that have double nationality. So we sometimes speaking with the Portuguese government or people from there. And this is our activity. We're trying to stay in doing method. So yeah, we can only imagine. Omri, I thank you very much. I wish you all the best, and I hope for good news. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Ambassador Ayalon, I want to ask you, even if we do have this deal, 50 some hostages will be freed, how will they keep this momentum afterwards when there are almost 100 still there? 200, sorry. Almost 200 will still be there in Gaza.
Well, Sinwar's goal is basically to keep the ceasefire going as long as possible. So I believe that after we see this deal of the first 50 released, then immediately there will be talk about another batch, hopefully the rest of them. But it will depend, of course, on Sinwar, how many really Sinwar still has in his custody. Let's say that he would have another 150 or so, then he will try to stretch and actually have them in more batches for as many days as he can, and a lot will depend on the Israeli response. Will Israel will take it and continue the ceasefire, which would be very, if the ceasefire goes too long, it will be very difficult to resume the ground operations, and we're coming into a winter, and that's not very good conditions for the military to stay stationary in the Gaza. So the dilemma will be, what do we do? Do we take this offer for a protracted deal over days, maybe even weeks, or resuming the ground operation with the hope that the ground operation may actually induce him to do a deal which will be the final deal when the real military pressure will come very, very next to him, and he is probably in the southern part of Gaza, in the Khan Yunis area, which we have not really gone into yet.
Yeah, that's exactly the dilemma of the Israeli government and the Israeli military establishment, what to do and what happens if there is a forced ceasefire. Now, as we speak, the cabinet is convening. Do you or can you imagine for us what is the debate like between whom and whom in this room?
I think that there is an agreement, a wide agreement, that this is a deal which is not a good deal, but this is the only deal right now. And if this is the only deal, this is a necessary deal to do. Because first and foremost, to really have a peace of mind to the families, and of course to bring as many as possible hostages back home. So I think there's going to be an overwhelming majority, and of course we have the two populist ministers, Smotrich and Ben Gvir, which have not revealed yet how they're going to vote.
They're going to oppose. They already announced. Yeah,
They're going to oppose, but they should understand that according to the Israeli political, let's say, the constitution, as we call it, and political culture, if they vote no, it doesn't mean that they are exempt from the collective responsibility.
So if they're serious about it, you say they should resign. But that's
Exactly.
yeah, exactly. Do we have Jonathan Regev in the South? Our defense correspondent in near the Israeli-Gaza border. Jonathan, we are with you with the update from there.
Yes, I have to say that the last hour or so has been relatively quiet. We've not seen a lot of, or seen or heard a lot of artillery in Gaza, and following that those rockets that were fired towards central Israel, reaching as far as Rishon LeZion. No other rockets on this area. I think a very big expectation on both sides, I have to say, for what may come next, which is possibly that hostage deal that you've been speaking about. I think if we look overall at what happened here on the border in the past 5-6 hours, we're seeing a bit less of activity than we've seen over the past few days. Of course, no one is really mentioning it, and then probably no one will speak about it officially. But if there is some kind of a not ceasefire, but perhaps lowering the level of fire, then it may have already begun, as we're seeing less activity on both sides.
All right, Jonathan, thank you very much for that. The update from the south. We'll take a short break and we'll be right back with more special coverage here on I-24 News. Thank you.
The job of his aerial reconnaissance unit is to provide cover for Marines crossing the river and to watch the enemy on the other side. Do you feel safe where you are?
It's dangerous here, where we live and where we work. Every time I enter the zone, I say goodbye to my life. But I realize that my life can be ended at any moment. You get used to it, but it's unpleasant.
The reason this left bank operation is so important for Ukraine is to open the road to Russian-occupied Crimea and to protect the nearby city of Kherson. A year ago, the Russians withdrew from Kherson, using the Dnipro River as a defendable natural barrier between the two sides. But in the last month, attacks on Kherson have intensified to the point where the region's military governor told me there were 700 incoming rounds in one day. This is revenge, and now it's for blood. Because our soldiers are already on the left bank, and our civilians are feeling this revenge. 300,000 residents used to live in Kherson. Now less than a quarter remain, including 56-year-old Anna. She cares for her invalid mother, Ismaila, and her 4-year-old grandson. 24 hours a day, it's scary. When it's quiet, it's even scarier than when there is shelling. She says she lived through 8 months of Russian occupation and will endure this as well. Our main task is to survive, she says. That was the priority during the occupation, and it's the same thing now. We have to survive. A daily struggle for a population that's being constantly terrorized. Anna Klein, CNN. Well, coming up, a cautious sense of hope builds for the families of hostages taken by Hamas. The very latest on a potential deal for their release. Ayon sa Galaxy Maritime na may-ari ng Galaxy Leader na wala na rin komunikasyon sa grupo sabay sa pagkawala nito. Sa ngayon, prioridad ng nilang matiyak na kaligtasan ng 25 crew members nito. Sinusubukan pa namin kunin ang pahayag ng ating pamahalaan para kumpirmahin ang impormasyong may Pinoy sa grupo. Ang grupo ay isang grupo ng Yemen na kaalyado ng Iran at mayroong major military force sa Arab Peninsula. Ayon sa tagapagsalita ng grupo, dinala raw nila ang cargo ship sa baybayin ng Yemen. Dagdag pa nito, tatargetin nila ang mga barkong pamay-ari ng Israel at magpapaguloy sa operasyon hanggang patuloy ang pag-atake nito sa Gaza Strip. Ang kinatawan ng grupo Hamas, pinasalamatan ng pulis sa pagsasal nito sa barko na tinawag nilang welcome step sa pagsuporta sa mga Palestino. Pero ayon sa Israel, ang barko ay pamay-ari ng isang British company na pinapatakbo ng isang Japanese firm. Wala raw Israeli sa kayang barko. Kinondena din ni Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu ang ating pag-atake ng Iran sa isang international vessel. Pero hindi nandito ng Iran. Para sa GMA Integrated News, sa Lima na Friday, ito, 24 oras.
World Expo 2030 is a priority for Saudi Arabia. Riyadh is ready to host the world. This will be the most accessible
Expo ever. Seamless participation for all countries. An unparalleled experience. Promoting international business collaboration and investment opportunities. Going beyond carbon neutrality to deliver the first carbon net.
Since November 20th,
This
social
is a pivotal moment for Saudi Arabia. We look forward to welcoming you all. Riyadh Expo 2030. It's time to vote for your favorite CNN hero of the year.
We provide bilingual education at the U.S. Mexico border.
We are rebuilding
Kaya sa mga
our
Philippines, ingat kayo sa mga notification na dumadating sa inyo.
I want to ensure that people have access to health care. I see a need and a person who cares for me dearly.
CNN Heroes, an all-star tribute, Monday, December 11th on CNN. World Sport, I'm John Riddell, and this is CNN.
Kung pwede lang magmamakyo dito, magmakyo ka.
Business is all about making connections.
Alam ko nanonood yung mga yan eh. Kasi blinak ko na sila sa Instagram. So, if you are watching this, again, may middle finger sa lubos ko.
With the CNN Partner Hotel, the world is always CNN Partner Hotel, connected to your world.
Thank you po. Ate Jen, akyat ka na.
Tiger habitat. We're already showing what it takes to help tiger
Punta sa Ate Jen yung sabi niya sa akin, subukan mo lang para if ever na kaya nila. So, kinaya nila kaya kung mahahaman kayo, message nyo lang ako para matulungan din kayo. Thank you, Ate Izzy. Masalo.
these magnificent creatures.
Mission Tiger, Sunday on CNN, in association with Be Great. This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
Ayan na siya.
Welcome back to my world. I'm Bianca with the rep. Reporting on very time
Nakawuro ako.
is being
Alam ko,
made on the
net na
potential
ginawa
release
kami
of
kasi
hostages being held in
nung
Gaza.
Sunday,
This after sources said terror is
meta yung
being
Facebook ko,
to announce the release of civilian hostages in
kaya
exchange for a pause in fighting.
so sabi
We
ni sir,
understand that
sabi niya sa akin,
announcement
sir,
on
bakit
this
na
news
nandito
today.
ako? Pero
On
kailangan
Monday, Israel County destroyed members of his wartime
kasi nila,
relatives with
yun pala yung
hostages
process.
who have been
Either
seeking
nila
out
lang
a backup for
meta
Thursday
yung
over the
Facebook,
government's
yung
handling
creator.
of the crisis.
Buti na lang yun.
Alex Marquardt has the
Sobrang
reaction
thankful ako
from
sa nahack
Washington,
sa'yo, Ate
D.C.
Carl.
So as
Siya
it was
nakapagdala sila na.
reported, this is something that the Prime Minister says could be imminent. And he just in the last hour, President Biden seconded
Kasi
that.
nung
Yeah, Bianca, it's
isa
not
lang pala
the all
kasi
currently in Israel's court. They're
di
going to
ba
have
Sunday
several
ako
rounds of voting. The war cabinet is just now, the security cabinet, and the broader government will vote on whether to approve this deal. The other parties who are involved, notably Hamas, have agreed to the major terms in this deal, and what we expect to follow in the coming hours and days would be an initial release of 15 hostages from Hamas custody. These would be all civilians, women and children, over the course of a 4 or 5 day pause in the military fighting would be released. You can see that this has happened on a rolling basis with 10 to a dozen released per day. We also understand from multiple sources that there's a possibility that if that goes well, if that goes according to plan, that pause could be extended. And more of these hostages who are being held by Hamas could then be released. Now, part of this deal, also one of the demands the Hamas had, was that Palestinian prisoners in Israeli custody would be released at the same time, a ratio, in fact, of 3 to 1. So if 50 of these Hamas hostages are released, then 150 Palestinian women and children would also be released at the same time from Israeli prisons. And of course, if Hamas releases more hostages, then Israel would then release more prisoners. Beyond the finally, there is also the major question of food going into Gaza. This has been a big demand by Hamas that hundreds of trucks on the scale of say 300 to 400 trucks a day be allowed to go into Gaza every single day beyond this pause in the fighting. We understand that there is
some controversy
maraming
around the
nag-o-offer,
implementation
marami
of
akong
that, notably
nakakausap
the
sa
screening.
pero
Israel wants to have
ginagawa nila
oversight of
Facebook
everything that is
ads,
going
hindi
into
sila
the
nag-add
Gaza
ng
Strip.
Facebook
So
page.
there
So
is a
ako,
sense, Fiona, there's a lot of
sabi niya sa
confidence in
pagaling niya,
Washington, a
lalong
lot of optimism that this deal has been agreed to, that the hostages, at least the first 50, will be released. But major questions
pero
about
ano
what would
nangyari
happen
kasi sa kanya,
beyond that
ni-report
4
niya
or
na
5
agad,
days
kaya parang
when the
demonetize
gun
na yung
will
Facebook
be
page.
hearing profiles.
Oo, kaya magkakakita
Well,
tayo,
Secretary
gusto mo na
Clinton
tumahay
really
lang
only
kaya
ran out
lahat
of
tayo.
time for the Israelis to permit drone surveillance over
May
Gaza
nag-message
as
sa
well.
akin sa
That had been
Instagram, sabi niya
sticking
sa
point
akin,
and one of the demands from Hamas.
bro, we gotta get you,
Mark,
we gotta
thank
get
you so
you,
much.
sabi niya sa akin.
Well, let's get more on
Tapos
this.
sabi ko,
Again,
how
with
did you know?
police, we cover
Sabi niya, no,
politics
no,
and
because my
foreign
friend,
policy
you are
for us. I've just been following reporting as we noted in this hour. The defense ministry there, the war ministry is going over
no, you
and
were one of the hackers.
discussing this potential deal. And from the reporting, it appears the IDF
Kasi
is indefinitely
imagine
stopped
naka
and the more
3.7
cabinet
million na
cabinet
yung
secure that
views
then
mo,
goes
sabi niya sa
to the
akin.
Knesset
Pero
as a
this is the
whole,
deal,
where it
sabi
does
niya.
appear that they will get majority
Kapag
support.
nabawi natin yung
So
account
once
mo,
that happens,
kasama na
what
ako sa
happens
fake
then?
PR.
When should
Sabi
we
ko,
start seeing
clear ko na.
things actually improving?
Kasi mas tiwala ako dito kay sir. Kasi siya
Yes,
yung basa.
the
Skills na nabawi na sir. Hindi na nila ma-open.
as we speak, or they're just about to.
Dapat. Iba talaga explanation yun.
Even though far right
Sabi ko,
parties and the
tapos inabot sila ng 6 million yung isang yung
those are six ministers
Hindi ko alam kung sino tatanggap ng payouts na yun eh. Feeling ko ako.
but that's still an interesting point that there are six ministers who are going to
Di ba
vote.
tinanggal nila? Kinensi
But
nila.
when the deal
Oo,
is
lahat
through,
tinanggal
there are
nila.
still
Hindi ko alam kung
process
kumita
of
kapag
24 hours
may threatening ka na magbibigay na agad ng pera. So, hindi ko alam kung pag-payouts. Hindi ko pa na. Matawag si Bakay lang. Sabi ni sir, gusto na lang palitan sir si Bakay lang tayo. I-review muna namin. Basta sabihin ko sabihin ng nakabalik na tayo. Wala. Di ba really? Pwede na kaya lang.
Some of them might go to Gaza.
So this would be a 3-for-1 deal, as Alex noted. 3 Palestinian prisoners in exchange for one Israeli hostage. You note in your reporting that these are women and children in Israeli prisons, and that none of the Palestinians who killed Israelis will be part of this group. Do we have any indication of Hamas releasing a list of names of the hostages that it is prepared to turn over?
Malayo ka ba?
What Israeli officials say is that
Malapit ka doon sa park, doon sa
50
school, ay
women and children that they will be released
yung
over
paikot,
4 days of the pause. So,
yung may school, tapos yung may tulay.
more than 12 people every day. And Israel will get the list of the people who will be released the night before. So we still don't know who's going to be released. Israel doesn't have full clarity about who are the hostages in Gaza. It's fully political. The Israelis don't know who's going to be released. But in the next 24 hours, Israel will get a lot of information.
How difficult were the negotiations over the drone surveillance that Hamas was demanding stop? Israel, it appears, agreed to a 6-hour curtailment of surveillance.
So first, Hamas is wanted 3 days. As long as there's a positive contact, Israel will not operate drones for aerial surveillance in Gaza. During the negotiations, the shifted that demand and compromise was 6 hours per day. But you know, the Israeli officials said quite clearly that the purpose of symbolic is letting intelligence services have all different ways of spying on what's going on in Gaza. They can deal with the situation without our still know what's going on.
One can assume that if this goes according to plan, and there are the 4 or 5 days of a pause, there will be additional pressure on Israel for an extended pause or a ceasefire. Israel has said that it is not going to be implementing a ceasefire, but what are the plans following those 4 or 5 days? Because your reporting suggests that they are continuing this war after that.
Yeah, definitely. First, the Israelis say
sumunod.
Wala na sila. Hindi na kasi nagdadala
hostages and after those 4
yung mga
days of
mga
fire, we're
Ginagamit
hoping
nila, ginagamit
if
nila
Hamas comes on day 5,
water park. Sila, sila ako.
Israel will give another day of pause. Hamas says you will need to release 20, you will give them 2 days.
Meta kung sino nila. Kaya siya pa rin. Mga nasa.
Hamas really wants it. And we can see it moving from 4 days to almost 10 days. So,
mabait yung matanda. Mabait yung matanda.
what we hear from
Mabait yung amo ko, pero sana isin niya kabigyan ng sabi kasi ng agency. SD card ng agency. Katawagan ko yung amo.
it's getting on. Meaning,
Napasis na yun. Kaya nga ako nakalabas ng bansa.
the idea of already approved for the operation is a unit
Pagdating namin dito,
which will be a much more limited operation.
Naitatag yung SB to.
Northern Gaza, but this is not the end of the war.
Final question, what role is Mohammed Jihad having in these negotiations? We focus so much on the three-way discussions among Qataris, Hamas, and the Israelis. But what role is Islamic Jihad having, given that we know that they have at least some of these hostages as well?
Exactly.
But nawala.
They're holding something between, 40 to 50 hostages, and you know, the Qataris are not talking to Islamic Jihad, they only talk to Hamas.
Yan, tumatawag kasi yung kapatid ko. Ano rin sasabihin ko? Akala ko, kapag nililinis, mananatili pa rin yung SB1.
Wala, pero di ba SB1 is 1 year. Pwede kasi hindi ba pwede pang nirelease sila, pwede i-sunset. Para ilagay ko sa kanya, di ba ako caregiver.
SB1 dapat.
Oo, yun.
Ay,
So yung agent, yung agent mismo, kausap niya kanina, sabi niya, 2 years na rin siya. Kasi pag nag-isa na ako sa request, yung ako imasap sa sabi niya, sige, gagawin natin ng paraan, tatawagan ko ulit siya kasi yung age daw ng lola ko, hindi pasok doon sa, hindi pasok doon sa mismo, oo, doon sa visa. Pero sabi niya, sige, sabihin mo sa kanya, tatawag ulit ako sa kanya, gagawin natin ng paraan. Kasi yung caregiver nila dito, 14 years na siya dito, pero parang bibisahan pa siya, 14 years na yun.
Tapos ikaw, ba't 10 years na
Kaya
naman
nagdaw ako, parang pasok na pa siya. Sana magawa ng paraan. Kasi pag hindi nagawa ng paraan, wala na yung visa. Yung isang bilhin na kung nasa niya naman, 55 naman yun. Pero nasa wheelchair yun.
kung sa'yo?
Nalalakad. Kaya ito kinuha. Nalilig ko mag-isa.
Kaya ba yun? Pero sana yun.
Tsaka parang sana na praying na bigyan ng visa kasi ngayon ako bigyan ng mga caregiver sila. Sana pumayag sila.
Pero ano dyan, ilang
Please ka lang po.
Bakit?
Kasi paalis na si Ako. Yung caregiver yun. So, alis na siya ng Wednesday. Oo, kasi plus na si Ate na gusto na niya magpahinga.
Kaso parang
I am
ilang ka
Guru
na.
Gulfasson.
Yung
I am
caregiver niya,
Executive Director of Office
bibisahan ko siya, pero ayaw ko na pag-isa kasi nag-work siya for months
One of
kasi
the list of solutions
may 14 years na yun. So, isipin mo yung 14 years yun. Mabibigyan na siya ng visa, bibisahin ito lahat.
with government staff.
Where's the validity?
Na mabibigyan ng visa.
Listen and contribute to great
Kaso first
conferences.
kita meron
It's
pala.
also a special place as Saudi Arabia is a
Kasi meron siya
player
sa
in
office,
and renewable
siya,
energy.
sumakay na niya talaga naman
The good news of the graph here is that all big countries, they are all committing to strong targets in terms of energy transition and fighting against climate change.
Nadaanan niya ng gusto.
What do you say to the following?
Stay informed, stay connected, stay invested. Join me for Connect the World with Becky Anderson.
Weekdays on CNN.
Japan is working to secure the release of a cargo ship and 25 crew members hijacked in the Red Sea off the coast of Yemen. This video, shot by Yemen's Houthi rebels, shows the moment they stormed the ship Sunday after getting off a helicopter lowered onto the ship. While the ship is leased by a Japanese company, Israeli media outlets report that an Israeli businessman is part owner of the British company that owns the vessel. Houthi officials say the hijacking is in retaliation for Israel's war on Hamas. North Korea claims that it just launched a military spy satellite into orbit. This would mark Pyongyang's third attempt to put a satellite into space, following two failed launches earlier this year. The U.S. has condemned these launches, calling them a brazen violation of multiple UN Security Council resolutions, adding they raise tensions in the region and beyond. We're taking a look now at Nigeria, which has the highest number of financial technology startups in Africa, receiving more than 40% of fintech funding on the continent over recent years. This month, Africa Insider meets Okra. It's a Nigerian company that designs and develops software that lets users connect bank accounts and financial data directly to third-party applications. The goal is to go beyond open banking to open finance. Fintech is really important for the African landscape because not only are you able to build for the underbanked, the unbanked, and the banked population, but Africa as a whole, 60% of the population is under the age of 25, meaning that fintech is ushering in the next generation of products for the next generation of consumers. I'm Farah here, and I'm the founder and CEO of the Nigerian startup Okra is an open finance API that enables businesses to build personalized financial services for their customers. We're B2B2C, meaning that we serve businesses so they can effectively serve their consumers. We are essentially building for the next generation of financial services. Some of the challenges we face starting Okra is we were building in a very fragmented ecosystem. By nature, building anything on a continent where the rails don't exist before is incredibly hard. We also started Okra in a pandemic year, which also brought in its own set of interesting nuances. But it also brought a lot of opportunities along the way as well. Because what we found is that the number one conversation in every boardroom was around digital transformation. From starting in 2020, we've grown from one person to 15 amazing people working together in this Okra pod. And we have raised over and after a long hour, the signal was given. With the IDF's ground entry into the northern Gaza Strip, leaflets were distributed calling on uninvolved civilians to leave and move south through the humanitarian corridor near Zaytun. And since then, thousands have arrived at this point every morning waiting for their turn, while the fighting continues all around. What happened? Shooting?
This is an attack.
Ours?
Yeah, every day more and more civilians are evacuated here, which leaves Gaza only with terrorists. It allows us to fight them freely without restrictions.
Fighting there is, the more the forces go south, then there's a larger evacuation population. This is part of locating prisoners and missing persons, trying to make sure that the prisoners and missing persons are not yet smuggled here. That is why sometimes they speak Hebrew to call the prisoners and missing persons.
The flow of refugees to the south continues. But everything is under review, under control. A strict verification, and most of the steps can't be documented. Is there pity sometimes, or
Pity for whom? For every human being, I think, is merciful. Everyone has their own threshold of mercy. I don't mean that everyone deserves it. They live in an unpleasant environment. Their fault, not their fault, that's another question.
Still, something to tell my parents that I'm fine. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm good. Everything's fine. I'm fine. Sasha, everything's fine. It will be fine.
How does it feel here?
Interesting. The situation is not easy, but we're strong. That's the most important thing. Strong in a mission.
אז הכיוון המשימה. להשלישתי גם הגיע לאהובה שלי. חיים שלי נראות ככה.
And on the way out, it was hard to miss the battalion commander, the poet, and his entry video to Gaza.
In the fires of war, in the burning of the fire, among stormy days of blood, I'm turning on my little flashlight to search for a human being we will win as human beings. I told my soldiers, as I said to them, we are better than our enemy in how we fight, in quality and in humanity and morality. That's how we win.
That's inside Gaza. Many Israelis volunteered these days, and with us now is Daniel Yildiz, the director of Kerem House. Thank you for coming.
Happy to be here.
How do you help them to help others?
So, I would say that from our perspective, what we do at Caregiver House among community activities and volunteering ourselves is finding volunteer opportunities, which we post every day on the Caregiver House story on Instagram and Facebook. So people who want to volunteer for the specific things that are offered can do so. People can cook, people can teach yoga, people can drive, many different opportunities, which we look for daily.
So you're coordinating all these volunteering actions now. So give me some examples. What do people do these days?
Oh boy. One of the bigger ones is cooking. There are a few different kitchens. There's Citrus and Salt and J17, which make 2,000 to 3,000 meals a day for displaced people and for soldiers. There's JLIC with Rabbi Joe Wolfson and Yakar and Tel Aviv International Synagogue that are doing, first of all, they're picking agriculture. We're really helping with the agriculture, like Achim Lameshek, like those kind of things. We have activities for displaced people in Tel Aviv. There's over 10,000 of them. Saturday night activities, concerts, performances. We have dog walking. Doggy sitting is really popular. People are interested in walking dogs for soldiers and people who can't. So much more.
Now, you need quite a lot of money to do all of this. This is all on a volunteering base.
So I'd say the story of how we started with the volunteering is myself and some other people who were running for city council with Deputy Mayor Chaim Goren for the Gov Party, and something situation caught everyone here by surprise. We're like, what can we do to redirect these efforts? So the first thing, like in the video you see here, people ran to Kikar Dizengoff, just bringing things, shopping carts, full of whatever they could find in the supermarket. Eventually that moved to Hangar 11, and then it moved to the Expo. But some things that ran out initially were the donations. If anyone has money they want to donate, there are plenty of good causes. But what people want to do is help. People really wanted to contribute. And we find that the amount of initiative and individuals who want to do things is huge. We get anywhere from like 40 to 100 plus messages a day of new people trying to volunteer. People from out of the country say, we're coming to Israel in November. In December, we want to help. What can we do? The number one thing they're looking for usually is accommodation. So, but there are many people who just want to give with their hands. People don't have money necessarily to give, but they have time and they're willing to do so, and they are.
And any help from the government?
I don't know how to reach the government. If they want to give us help, they can message us. We'll be very happy. We have lots of able volunteers, people we contribute to diplomacy initiatives, online writing, translating. They haven't reached out to us. I'm sure, hopefully they are doing a lot that we don't know about, but we're very much Tel Aviv, individual grassroots level.
Demographics?
I would say it's mostly young people, for like 20s and 30s, but not limited to. I'd say probably 30% of our volunteers are 40s, 50s plus, people with cars, people with children who take time off to help cook, to help move things, to help babysit a dog, a child, fix up a shelter.
Pensioners as well?
A few have, but to do that you would need to see our Instagram or on Facebook, but we've had a few people as well.
Oh, so tell me how to contact you.
So the way that you can follow what we do is Kerem House on Instagram or like our Kerem House, Kerem House. We also have website. In general, when it's not, a situation like this, we do community activities, very grassroots in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem and other places. But for Caremouse Tel Aviv, we're very motivated that everyone in Tel Aviv can find a volunteering opportunity every day that they want to. We post daily our stories of the volunteer opportunities that are coming up. And if you have things for you to volunteer at, we have many people who want to volunteer. Contact us. They would love to discuss it.
What about the demand side? How do you know what's the demand?
So for the demand, I would say initially there was a lot of demand. Every organization was posting. There was October 17th. The website wanted translations of the story. That was the number one thing, by the way, for us that got maxed out was translation. First English to Hebrew, Hebrew to English, and then it changed to other languages. The people wrote in. They really wanted to help and get the story out. And eventually they said we're just not getting the same kind of responses. But there's some things which constantly need help. New people are arriving from the north and south. So UDLV 48, they could definitely use the help. Cooking, constantly need for cooking, signing up in advance. And sometimes we're calling for people to demand. Like just today, I called Victoria from Israel Delivery. I said, hey, we're sending drivers. Things are good. She's like, yeah, we need even more. So we check in with those periodically every few days to see that things are moving along. Sometimes the kitchen closes. Sometimes they go to a larger space. But that's our job. Like, our work on our end is finding the volunteer opportunities so people who want to volunteer can do so.
All right, Daniel. Thank you very much and good luck with that.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. This is it for now. Stay tuned for more special coverage with Benita Levine tonight. Have a good night from Tel Aviv.
Israel is in a state of war. Families completely ducked out in their beds. We have no idea where as our soldiers are fighting on the front line, but the general perception is something that certainly needs to be fought as well.
and we are now at the closest point we ever have in reaching an agreement.
This is breaking news edition. I'm Vanessa Levine. Israel's cabinet is set to meet shortly on an apparent deal to release dozens of hostages held by Hamas in Gaza for more than 6 weeks now. It's going to vote on that deal soon. A deal that could see the release of some of the 236 hostages abducted from their homes or from a music festival during that terror rampage in southern Israel on the 7th of October. The hostages include 38 children. Baby Kfir Bibas is now 10 months old, and there could well be a newborn baby too, born to a Thai woman in captivity. The eldest hostages are in their 80s. Their condition is still not clear. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu saying in recent hours they are making progress on a deal. Qatar could make an announcement soon. The deal is said to involve a pause in fighting in Gaza for 4 days. And now let's find out what is happening on the ground. We cross first to our correspondent Robert Swift, and he joins us from northern Israel. And Rob, there were sirens in the north indicating a hostile aircraft above. Red alert sirens in Shlomi, Rosh Hashanah, Dovev, and surrounds earlier in the evening local time. What is the latest update right now?
So in the last hour, the Israeli military has said that it has conducted strikes against Hezbollah positions and compounds, and this comes in response to 3 separate incidences of drone infiltrations. The first of these, about 2 hours ago, took place on the far western end of Israel's northern border, and that was followed a few minutes later by a second incident in around the central area of Israel's northern border. Now, the first of these 2 events, that is understood that that was also supported by some form of rocket or mortar attack from Hezbollah, and the Israeli military has confirmed that it shot down the drone in that incident. Now, about an hour ago, just about an hour and 15 minutes ago, a third incident took place with an additional drone crossing into the far eastern end of Israel's northern border, and this comes on the back of a day which has seen a series of exchanges of attacks between Hezbollah and Israel, with Israel conducting a number of airstrikes inside southern Lebanon, including killing a senior Hamas commander who was responsible for Hamas operations in the south of Lebanese territory.
Thank you so much. We will be coming back to you for regular updates. For now, thank you to our correspondent Robert Swift in northern Israel. Thank you. And still, with our focus on that hostage deal, let's take a closer look at what is being discussed. The release of 53 hostages, children and their mothers. 10 hostages will be released every day. A ceasefire will be in place for 4 days, and 150 Palestinian prisoners will be released, mainly women and minors. Now, other details include IDF drone activity will be suspended for 6 hours during the ceasefire. The hostages will be transferred to Egypt through the Rafah crossing and from there onto Israel. And Hamas will be obliged to give Israel the names of the hostages said to be released a day in advance. Soldiers, men, and those bodies of those killed will not be released at this time. Foreign hostages and the elderly may be released during the ceasefire. Now, in recent hours, Benjamin Netanyahu saying they are making progress.
We are currently focusing on a very strong and active defense in the north in order to achieve a crushing victory in the south. Our first objective, annihilating Hamas. We will not stop until it is done. Second objective, bringing the hostages back. We're making progress. I don't think we should go into details at this time, but hopefully we'll have good news soon. The third objective, to ensure that what happened in Gaza will not happen again. We want to regain security, and we will operate and restore security in the south and in the north. And the main instrument we have is the Israeli spirit that is manifested here through the soldiers and commanders coming from all parts of Israel and from all sectors of Israeli society. It's an amazing force, and I salute you and tell you, we will continue until we achieve victory.
And again, the Israeli cabinet is set to meet shortly to discuss the details of that deal. Right now, we welcome to studio Avi Pashner, former Israeli ambassador to France and Italy, and the former world chairman of Karen Hayasod United Israel Appeal. Dr. David Shimoni, former intelligence official and commanders for Israel's security, and our senior correspondent, Owen Alderman. Gentlemen, thank you all for being with us here in studio. The hearts of the nation waiting for word. We know that meetings are underway, but Owen, I want to start with you specifically on the process right now, because it could take a while before confirmation is heard in the country.
That's right, Benita, and it is confusing, especially to people outside Israel, but also to some of us inside Israel as well. To make it simple, three separate bodies voting on this deal. The War Cabinet, the Narrow War Cabinet, that's the first. The Security Cabinet, or the Statutory Security Cabinet, that's number two. And then the full government, or if you will, in the parlance of the full cabinet. So the War Cabinet, the Security Cabinet, the full cabinet. What do we mean? First, the War Cabinet, established for the purposes of managing this war. Established when Benny Gantz went into the government, that first week or two of the war. 5 members, 3 vote, 2 observers. That body involved in negotiating this deal, Benita, they've already wrapped up their work and passed the baton to who's now meeting, which is the Security Cabinet, set up under Israeli law, Israeli statute, to be involved in managing a war such as this one. They are meeting as we speak. Some of those members have already announced they're going to come out against this deal. Bezalel Smotrich, the finance minister, head of the Road to Zionism Party, Itamar Ben-Gvir, national security minister, head of the Jewish Power Party, have already announced they're going to be opposing this. Also, Gideon Sa'ar, Benny Gantz's National Unity Party, saying he's going to wait and see until he understands and hears all of the details. So, at least in the room where people are meeting right now, there will be some opposition, though again, it doesn't change the result. There is going to be a majority in the Security Cabinet and also in the third step, right? The full government, 30-plus ministers, variety of political opinions from a huge assortment of parties. There too, there will be opposition, both the Jewish Power Party and Religious Zionism Party, those two far-right parties, led by Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, respectively, announcing they're going to come out against it. Other parties, such as the ultra-Orthodox Shas Party, going to be for it. At any rate, this is going to pass, but it is going to pass with a not immaterial amount of opposition. There's going to be a meaningful number. There's going to be a meaningful number of ministers who vote against this from those far-right parties. And also, we can say anecdotally, looking at social media and other reports, there's actually maybe a surprising amount of opposition to this deal from large parts of the Israeli right, maybe not only the constituents of those parties, will not endanger this deal, but there, I think, are questions and maybe warning signs for future deals.
And while we are speaking, Owen, on our screens, we are seeing live images in Tel Aviv. The families and communities waiting for answers are taking a stand there. We will be going there live very shortly. But Avi, I want your take on the reports that we're hearing right now. And as Owen is explaining, it could be a while before we get official confirmation. But so much has been made about all hostages or none. And now we're hearing women and children, probably around 53 hostages. Your take on what Israel needs to do to secure the release of these people?
Yeah, thank you, Benita. First of all, we have to understand that even if and when the Israeli government approves the deal, still we have an unreliable partner, the Hamas. And we are not immune for surprises of the last minute, okay? So I trust that the Israeli government will approve the deal. As Owen said, there will be opposition, but the deal will pass. I hope that the Hamas will also allow the deal to go forward. And then we will have a period of intense tension without shooting, hopefully. But every day we will have to wait until the 10 or 12 hostages be released through Egypt. And every day there will be the question, is the ceasefire really for 4 or States, or maybe the Hamas will play other games and say, okay, if you give us 2 or 3 more days, we give you 20, 30 hostages. Those will be tense days. And then there is also a big question that nobody has put on the table now. What happens on the northern border? Will the fighting with Hezbollah continue? Is that part of the deal without anybody saying anything? I don't know. I simply don't know. But you see that the situation is escalating on the northern border, and there is no answer to that.
Dr. Shimoni, your take, given your security and intelligence background and exactly what we are discussing right now, the security concerns and risks right now as details of this deal emerge.
Sure. Well, first of all, we're all ignorant to the exact details of the deal and the timetables and names of the prisoners that will be exchanged. But from an intelligence point of view, having 50 something hostages released, that's a gain of intelligence, because although many of them will be children and women or quite ignorant of what's happening, we will be able to form a better picture of what's happening there and who is still there and how many of them maybe have died in captivity or were executed in captivity. So we will get quite a lot of information, not full information, but it will clarify a lot of the mystery around what's happening there. Also, the burden on the intelligence community will be less, because each one of these hostages has a team working on an intelligence officer, an analyzer, a psychologist, a doctor. There are many people that are involved, and we'll be able to have more effort on those remaining in captivity. Regarding the security question, as far as we know, the military and the entire intelligence community supports this deal, which means they say they can bear the consequences. The military says if we have ceasefire, for partial ceasefire, limitations on reconnaissance flights, we can still continue with our mission once we get the order to continue. As far as the soldiers are concerned, we're talking about the Hamas regrouping and reorganizing, but it's same for the IDF. If we can bring supplies with less danger to the trucks and vehicles that are bringing supplies, that's also a blessing for us. It's also an advantage for us. So I say overall, and again, we don't know the details. We don't know the exact discussions that are taking place now with the government at all levels that Owen just mentioned. But we believe that the Israeli army and the intelligence community can bear with this deal and maybe even benefit from it.
Gentlemen, we're going to discuss much more on all these fronts, but right now, let's go to Tel Aviv, and our correspondent Nicole Zedek joins us from the site now known as Hostage Square. So we're talking here in studio, Nicole, about the angst and the emotions the families must be going through, waiting for updates on this hostage deal. What is happening where you are?
It's definitely an anxious time, and you can feel it in the energy all throughout this hostage square, where everywhere you walk there is a different memorabilia, a different show of support, a different piece of artwork representing the hostages, and it's continued to grow over the past 46 days. And now with this news that the hostage negotiation, a hostage deal could truly be coming to fruition, it's an anxious feeling, but also a somber feeling, because although the reports state possibly 50 women and children might be released, and all of those hostages are going to be welcomed with open arms, and that's certainly something that the hostages and missing families forum continues to reiterate. However, until every single one of them is returned home, until this entire Shabbat table continues to see people, every single one of these seats are filled once again, that is when we will stop feeling this anxious feeling for every single one of those family members. So with these reports, it continues to really play also into the psychological dilemma and really the waiting game that these families have been seeing for the past 46 days now, because even as we go into these overnight hours and as the government is meeting and discussing this hostage deal, it might be still more days until even any of the family members know if it's their loved one that is being released. So tonight is just the beginning, and I can't even say it's the beginning because for the past 46 days, these families have been anxiously waiting. But with this news tonight, there's something different in the air. And the waiting game is a little bit more intense because they're waiting to find out if their loved one is on that list of people who might be released in the coming days.
Cannot imagine what they are going through. Certainly, everybody hoping to hear that there is some kind of news. We will be updating everybody as that all becomes available. For now, thank you so much to our correspondent Nicole Zedek updating us live from Tel Aviv. And from Tel Aviv, we go to the south. Let's check in with our senior defense correspondent Jonathan Regev, and he joins us from close to Storot. And Jonathan, rocket sirens sounding in Ashkelon in recent hours. Also, we know fighting intensifying inside the Gaza Strip. What updates can you share on either side in southern Israel and inside Gaza right now?
That is correct, but if I judge this entire afternoon, Benita, it has been perhaps a little bit more quiet than in previous days. I was at the same location where I am, just outside of Sderot, on Sunday 2 days ago, and then it was complete mayhem, lots of artillery sounding, and it's a different story today. I'm not going to say it's quiet, it's far from being quiet, and we have seen sirens in Ashkelon and further inland up until Rishon LeZion, just south of Tel Aviv. But altogether, this day has been more quiet, both in terms of sirens and in terms of artillery up until this point. Is this related to the negotiations regarding a ceasefire hostage deal? Perhaps, we don't know. All of these talks are quite secret. We do not have a lot of information regarding that, but altogether, this evening in Sderot, at least so far, has been more quiet than previous days. Whether it's all connected to the hostage deal or not, of course, we don't really know.
Jonathan, there were reports that the grandson of Hamas leader Ishmael Haniyeh had been killed in an Israeli strike in Gaza. Any confirmation? And if that is in fact the case, talk us through the impact and the implications.
First, there's no confirmation. I don't think that Israel is aware of every fatality in Gaza, unless it's a targeted killing. I don't know that the grandson of Ismail Haniyeh was specifically the target of an assassination. Implications, I'm not sure that there are any at this case. Of course, in a different kind of war, that perhaps could have some implications, such as senior official losing a family member, but in a war such as this one, all in, and the entire Gaza Strip under heavy fire, and the large Israeli ground offensive, I'm not sure it has a lot of implications.
Thank you very much for now. That's our senior defense correspondent, Jonathan Regev, live from southern Israel. More to come from Jonathan in the coming hours. And we are also expecting to hear later from Daniel Hagari, the IDF spokesperson, for his regular briefing. If and when that does happen, we will, of course, bring that to you live. Right now, I want to go back to our panel in studio. And Dr. Shimoni, I want to pick up on the plight of the hostages, if in fact, and certainly the nation is hoping, that upwards of 50 people, women and children, could be released soon. Talk us through the process there. What actually happens over and above the reports that they will be transported through Egypt and the Rafah crossing? Talk us through what happens to them once they do hopefully, and I stress, hopefully get home.
There's a mixture of interests here because, first of all, of course, we would like to unite them with their families. We would like their relatives to be around, but we would also like to, first of all, assess their condition, their medical condition, their psychological condition, which means they will be met by experts, by doctors, maybe psychiatrists, who will try to debrief them and ask them about their condition and establish what condition they are. And also, as I mentioned before, we would like to see what kind of intelligence, useful intelligence, immediate intelligence can be gathered from these people, which means they will be separated for a while from their families, again, after they hug and kiss and cry and about their condition, about people that they know about that were not released. Where are they? How are they? If they know of anybody else who was around them, who died, was executed, who is well. So there'll be a lot of debriefing. So I believe most of them, for a few days, will be moving either between their homes at some hotel, some facility where they can rest, be medically examined, talk to experts, both medical, psychology, and intelligence. That's what's expected for them.
Abby, I want to bring you in here because it is just unfathomable to think that over and above being held by a terror organization in tunnels or potentially scattered across the Gaza Strip, there has been no confirmation in more than 6 weeks from the Red Cross or any other body to the fact that they are even alive. And so, compounding the trauma that we are describing right now is the fact that families may in fact find out that their loved ones are not okay. And that just seems abhorrent over and above the fact that, of course, they're being held hostage by a terror organization. How is that possible in 2023 that there was no access given, or that the human rights organizations or health organizations, so called, couldn't get that basic information for the families after 6 weeks?
Benita, I think those human organizations, and especially the Red Cross, did not pressure too much the Hamas. I mean, I must tell you, when you mention the Red Cross, I can remember World War II. And the Red Cross did very little to really try to learn what is happening to the Jews in World War II. The Germans put Theresienstadt, a camp for the Red Cross to visit every 6 months. They would visit Theresienstadt. There was music and good food.
I'm going to stop you right now because the IDF spokesperson, Daniel Hagari, is about to speak. Let's take a listen.
Good evening. At the beginning of this evening, first of all, we have to say we have an ethical commitment to the security of the hostages and to bring them home to their families. Our hearts are with the hostages in Gaza, men, women, children, and elderly, among them also IDF soldiers who were abducted by a cruel organization and are held in Gaza. We shall do everything possible to bring them back as fast as possible. The Chief of Staff evaluated today with the reservists within the Gaza Strip, and he said to them that the ground operation brings achievements, but the road is still long. And we shall continue to pressure Hamas until we obtain the goals of the war, among them, of course, bringing the hostages back. We will update the families with any information we have about their loved ones, and later on the public through the media. Anything that has to do with this subject, I suggest to listen. I recommend to listen to reports from only official factors. We shall report the truth to the public when we have the details and the facts. When they will be in our hands, we shall report. During the day, the IDF continued to obtain achievements in Gaza. We encircled Jabalia. We also completed and deepened the war in the Zaytun compound. The forces expose terrorists, and we are prevailing. We will continue to eliminate the terrorists of Hamas no matter where they are. Today as well, we continue to expose the underground infrastructure of Hamas under the Shifa hospital, and we should do so with additional hospitals. They built a methodical infrastructure, and they use patients and doctors as human shields for terrorist activity. This is a war crime against the international law, and we should continue to expose this to the world in order to dismantle this method. In the north, we eliminated a few anti-tank units who tried to launch anti-tank missiles from the border to Israel. We eliminate every threat because that area in the border is a war zone, out of which Hezbollah is implementing terror and violates all the
personnel in urbanized areas and risks citizens. We also attacked weapons and the army base of Hezbollah. And this is in reaction to a shooting that Hezbollah did to urban areas in the north. We have no casualties. We are in complete readiness in the north, in offense and defense. In the home front, we keep updating the directives. Please listen to the directives. They're life-saving. Until now, we announced to the families of 390 soldiers who fell in battle of defending Israel. We are embracing the families in this very difficult hours, and we shall continue to do so. Any questions? Channel 13. If we're talking about the hostage deal, what about the risk of abducting soldiers and also jeopardizing the soldiers? And what happens if Hamas breaks the deal? There is advancement regarding the outline of the hostage deal. It has to be finalized by the government. We are now focusing on the fighting here in the IDF. We will know how to prepare in such a way that will preserve our operational achievements and also the outline that will be finalized. I suggest to wait until things are finalized. Before they're finalized, they're not final. And it might be a long way. I hope not, but you never know. How will we know what's happening in Gaza? Well, our drones are not going to be in the sky. If we're talking about a ceasefire, again, I repeat what I said. These are very important questions with a lot of details. There is an outline. We try to implement it. The IDF will be able to abide by any agreement, any finalization. This is a long war with a lot of stages. This outline as well will have stages. We're talking about a long war, and we have goals and objectives. In order to live up to these objectives, the road is long. So we will know how to preserve our achievements and also to prepare ourselves for the next stages.
IDF spokesperson Daniel Hagari delivering his latest briefing, updating the nation on the latest developments. And Abby, we are going to pick up where we left off before the briefing, but first I want to come to Owen because Daniel Hagari has covered a range of bases in his very short briefing, the north, the south, and of course the hostages top of mind. What stood out for you?
Well, first of all, at this, seemingly simultaneously with this briefing, Benito released into Israeli media pictures of the tunnels under Shifa Hospital. This is crucially important, right? This is the core front, if you will, for the IDF spokesperson's office, right? Establishing to the satisfaction of international media exactly what was under that hospital. I think that spokesperson's unit to date has established to international media's satisfaction, at least those who are willing to listen, right? That there was military activity in and under the hospital. But that's not going to be enough, right? Because the bar was set very high, both by the military itself and also by international public opinion, that if you're acting in the biggest hospital in the Gaza Strip, let alone in the middle of a war, that it has to be a military target of utmost importance. And the IDF said that it was essentially Hamas's Pentagon that was under the hospital. That has not yet been proven. The military said, give us time. It's complicated. We need time to look. We need time to do it safely. So far, the international media is waiting and suspending judgment. This may be another step in that long slog, if you will, but the spokesperson's unit is taking the journalists along. So let's wait to see if he gives that information in English and how he presents it. So that's number one. As for what we heard, first of all, an update on the fighting in Gaza, not unimportantly, right? The military is succeeding in encircling two major neighborhoods in Gaza City as we may be on the eve of a ceasefire, right? The Jabalia neighborhood, the Zaytun neighborhood, where there have been severe clashes and battles. So that's an important update. And in the north, hinting at the report from the other side of the border in Lebanon that the Israeli military had killed civilians, including journalists affiliated with a pro-Hezbollah or Hezbollah television channel, essentially saying Hezbollah is acting from urban areas. So there may be civilian casualties that's not the intent of the IDF activity. The IDF is not targeting civilians. And at any rate, Daniel Hagari is saying that was in response to Hezbollah itself targeting civilians on the Israeli side of the border. So many, of course, deflecting questions about the hostage deal, saying it's not finished, there's only an outline, and we're not commenting on anything until it's a done deal. Certainly to be expected for a military spokesperson. Those questions, in most cases, better directed to the political echelon. In any case, although there were a few questions about how the military manages the day after the deal, but again, Hagari not ready to really give much of an answer on those.
But he did mention, of course, the ethical obligation for Israel to make sure that the hostages are freed, and it was something we were talking about earlier. The fact that there isn't confirmation, official confirmation, as to how many of the hostages are in fact alive. Obviously, those names, according to the reports around the deal, will be released a day ahead of 10 people being released each day. It's complicated. What do you make? What is your take on the fact that there are families right now who actually don't even know if their loved ones are okay or not?
It's a terrible feeling. I wouldn't like to be at the place of these families. But as I understand it, one of the conditions of the deal was that all the hostages, the Israeli and the live, because they are foreign hostages, and regretfully, there might be some dead hostages, as we discovered at the Shifa hospital, 2 bodies of 2 women which were assassinated by Hamas. But again, why do we lack information? It is because the Red Cross and other institutions of the UN are not doing their job. And I can say that in general, the question of the Israeli hostages is marginalized outside Israel. You hear a little bit. I know, for example, in France, when Macron speaks about hostages, he speaks about 8 French hostages, French-Israeli hostages. The problem is not in the mind of the people. The problem is in the mind of every Israeli. Outside Israel, it is very difficult to find, apart maybe of Biden, who relates to it regularly. He had a few minutes ago another optimistic remark. But the problem of the hostages is being pushed aside. And it is our job, I believe, to sensibilize the world public